In any case, I happened to catch that you were planning to investigate the sand at a certain park on your way home, Araragi. You finished with that? I tried to call when you'd be done.
Her ears are a little too sharp, and her timing was dead on. And she doesn't beat around the bush. If it were me, I would have waited until tomorrow. We'd see each other at school. Frankly, I didn't think it was worth telling Hanakawa, though I was perfectly willing to if she wanted to hear about it. I'm not Hachikuji, so I didn't demand money for the story, of course. Compared to Hanakawa's free tutoring, it barely amounted to anything. I reported the findings of my sandbox investigation. I didn't embellish the story much, but I did leave out the reawakening of my inner child and my desire to slide down the slide. No harm done by a few small omissions. Whether or not I left my inner child out of it, Hanakawa treated me very much like a little kid when she scolded.
Tut!
Scolded or reprimanded, maybe. What'd she think I am?
No good, Aragi.
Huh? Sure, I know I'm no good, but you'd just come out and say so? Sugarcoat it.
No, I wasn't saying no good, Araragi. What you did was no good.
Your persecution complex is in overdrive, she accused. Sure, fair enough. Though maybe it was more of an inferiority complex than a persecution complex. But, what do you mean? What I did was no good. What's bothering you anyway? You said you had something on your mind.
Yeah, I figured you'd take care of things, so I thought I'd settle for an after-action report.
After-action report? Who the hell was she? Receiving reports from Senjogahara. Receiving reports from me. Our commanding officer or something? Wait, then what did I do wrong? I'm pretty sure I did just about everything I could. I envisioned the worst-case scenario and performed a scrupulous investigation. Okay.
You sure did. Playing in the sand, building a mound.
I'd left that out of it. Had something in my report tipped her off. Apparently, since she sounded so sure of it. Once again, talking to her is freaky. I feel like she sees through me, though, from a different angle than Ashino.
You've overlooked something important, Araragi. You made an erroneous assumption.
Assumption?
You're assuming the sandbox case has to be either the work of an aberration or a man-made phenomenon, correct?
Yeah, now that you mention, I guess I am, but what, is there another possibility? Hanakawa hadn't even seen the sand arranged in the shape of a demonic face with her own eyes. She'd only heard about it from Senjogahara, so how could she talk like she knew exactly what was going on? And Senjogahara had only heard an incredulous version of Hachikuji's 50-yen tale from me, before I'd even seen the real thing. As with the reawakening of my inner child, how could Hanakawa be so sure?
There is another possibility. A third possibility.
Damn, there is? You really do know everything, don't you? Ordinarily, I say this line with a sense of admiration, but I can't deny that just this once, there was a little bit of irony mixed in there as well. Despite my shameful pettiness, Hanakawa treated me to her usual response.
I don't know everything, I just know what I know.
This left me feeling utterly benign and cool-headed, which is no great feat, I have to admit. Hanakawa had me eating out of her hand, maybe it was thanks to the rehabilitation program or whatever. A third option, neither the work of an aberration nor the work of a human being, so, let's see. I thought it over inside my newly cooled head. It felt somehow like an extension of my exam prep. Well, a process of elimination just leaves something like a natural phenomenon, I guess. Maybe the airflow in the park and the position of the slide are such that a face could form by happenstance. I said this exactly as it occurred to me. But even as I was saying it, I knew it was nonsense. Or rather, the nature as culprit theory was pretty much the first one you'd consider, and just as quickly dismiss a crevice between two buildings was one thing. But no way the wind would be uniform in an open, unobstructed space like a park. Even supposing the shape didn't form all the time, Hachikuji and I had visited the park on totally random days, hard to believe. The parameters just so happened to line up perfectly. I'd only said it as conversation filler, and I girded my loins for Hanakawa's cursory dismissal. Perhaps another tut. Was I making a foolish remark on purpose, hoping for another one of those? I want to believe that I'm not that big of a fool, but if I was, my faint hopes were about to be dashed.
Bingo, sounds like you're on the right track, Araragi. No need for me to get involved then.
Huh? No? Hang on. You can't just bail on me like that. Don't back out now. It's still your job to explain to me what that actually means.
Why is it my job?
Mean, a natural phenomenon. The sand just happened to end up that way because of the wind or whatever. Impossible. Even as I spoke, I thought, this is what they mean by better left unsaid. Hanakawa not picking up on a problem when I did. Maybe it's just my inferiority complex talking again, but no, putting that aside. Even if the demonic form were the result of a natural phenomenon, the most placid solution here, why would Hanakawa want to scold me for dismissing the possibility out of hand and making my assumption? Could the rehabilitation program really be that strict? Was it a Spartan style of education that punished even the slightest moment of carelessness? That was my fear, but it was misguided, because Hanakawa was quite justified in scolding me.
Come on, Araragi. Wind and rain aren't the only natural phenomena.
Huh? The epilogue, or maybe the punchline of this story. After that, I returned to the park to confirm the solution Hanakawa suggested, and obviously, this goes without saying. But her deduction was right on the money.
Listen, Araragi, you keep saying that you checked out the sandbox, but it was just the sand you checked out, wasn't it? A sandbox also includes the container the sand is in.
The container? Even after she said it, it didn't click right away. And this usually ends up driven to the periphery of our thoughts on the subject. But of course, in order to keep it from mixing with the soil around it, the sand in a sandbox, unlike the sand on a beach, is surrounded by a container that is, for lack of a better analogy, like a swimming pool that's been partially buried in the ground. If you kept digging down into a sandbox, at some point you would reach the bottom. But a sandbox is surprisingly deep, so children sometimes believe that it's bottomless, or that it simply melds into the soil around them. That's how sandboxes are generally constructed. Anyway, and once it's pointed out, or once you think about it for a second, it all makes sense.
So, Araragi, if you're investigating a sandbox but didn't investigate the box itself, it doesn't really count as investigating the sandbox. And sand is heavy.
Even sand with nothing unusual about it. That's what she said, which is how I found myself at the sandbox in question, digging a hole with a shovel I brought. Digging hurriedly, but cautiously. And at last, after an excavation of about 2 feet, I reached the bottom, where there was an enormous crack. An enormous crack. Now it all made sense, because the bottom of the sandbox was ruptured, probably from a combination of age and the weight of the sand. As Hanakawa had pointed out, the surface settled into that shape appeared to be the solution to the mystery. Just as water conforms to the shape of a vessel, so too does sand, though it takes much longer and the process is less obvious than it is with water. Which is why the sand didn't revert immediately after children played there, or immediately after I kicked it all over the place in the course of my investigation, but it would revert over time. Almost as if it had a will of its own, taking on a shape that reflected the topography of the bottom of its container. And, as predicted, the demonic form was probably pure happenstance, thanks to the simulacrum phenomenon or what, I don't know. But it was just as Hanakawa said, the deterioration of the container and the weight of the sand, being neither man-made nor aberration-related, were indeed natural phenomena. Yet, not at all placid ones. The most placid solution, this was not far from it. Natural phenomena, though not wind and rain. Up to this point, it's natural phenomena, and it would be natural phenomena from here on out as well. As of now, those phenomena's effect was limited to a strange pattern appearing on the surface of the sand. But if the fissure in the container continued to grow, then the sandbox really might become bottomless sand, and earth mingling until they turned into quicksand or to the point of liquefaction, not on a scale that would pose a problem for an adult, perhaps, but one that might prove fatal for any children playing in the sandbox, who might be swallowed up, as if by a bottomless swamp. Even if that was the worst-case scenario, playing in a sandbox whose container was broken was a dangerous thing to do, dangerous enough that at this point it was a race against time. Which is why Hanakawa had scolded me. So for now, a call to the management company that oversees the park. No, it was probably the town that oversaw the park, not a private company. Well, if I contacted the all-knowing Hanakawa, she could tell me. Then at last we'd be leaving this case behind. But seriously, I thought, looking at the hole I had dug, maybe that whole debate misses the mark. Aberrations are more frightening than human beings. Human beings are more frightening than aberrations. That debate entirely missed the mark. More frightening and less placid than human agency or any aberration is nature. As scary as a demon, as scary as people. I bet Saruga Kanbaro thinks of a road as a place for running rather than walking, given that she runs full tilt down whatever road she's on, no matter the circumstances, regardless of wind or weather. In fact, this junior of mine seems to have a hard time even slowing down, let alone proceeding at anything like a leisurely pace. A hard time, yeah. Hardly her forte. But even though she's always hoofing it at top speed, maybe it's not so much that a fast pace is her specialty. Especially, but rather that a slow pace is so difficult for her to maintain that it's out of her hands, though not so difficult that she's bound hand and foot. In fact, Kanbaru, who has no qualms about embarking on a wild goose chase, probably never even considers taking a leisurely stroll anyway, a road, not trod, but raced down. Ever since she became a star, garnering the attention of the entire school, and even now, having lost none of her luster even after quitting the basketball team, Kanbaru has been in possession of a roadmap depicting an altogether different route from my own.
A road isn't how I think of it, Araragi-senpai.
This was her response when I broached the subject one time. As always, she looked directly at me when she spoke.
When running is a part of everyday life like it is for me, the place where you run isn't a road, it's a track.
A track? Sure, that's definitely what you'd call the road, where the runners run in track and field for a guy like me, though whose everyday life does not involve running, for whom running is a big deal. Calling it a track didn't sit well. How can I put this? Doesn't track strongly suggest an absolute fixed route from which you can't deviate?
What? I'm surprised at you, Araragi-senpai. Even when it means street, a road is still fixed, something you can't deviate from. If you just up and move into the next lane, you'll cause an accident. Changing lanes is never a simple matter, no matter what road you're on.
True, street, or track, it's merely a question of context, nothing more than semantics. In practice, whether you're running or walking, whether it's a street or a track, a road is a road. People talk about a life where the roadmap is already laid out for you, but since everyone is traveling down the road of life, we're all following some set of rules, obeying some set of traffic regulations. It's not so easy to drop out of the race to deviate from the fixed path. Changing lanes is all well and good, but you have to be careful, or you might drive straight off a cliff. And there's always the possibility of a head-on collision, so we have no choice but to keep chugging along down the road.
Well, that said, dropping out isn't actually all that hard. The truth is, even if you don't stray out of your lane, you can still drop out. Going full tilt down the road, down the track, is certainly chugging along, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're moving forward. People can chug along backwards, too.
They can and do, she said.
Because every route comes with an escape route.
Kanbaru. Hey, jackass, you haven't been listening to a word I say.
What? Araragi-senpai, as your junior, it makes my heart go pitter-pat to hear you call me jackass, but it's also upsetting to have such a charge leveled at me. The very idea that I, Suruga Kanbaru, hailed as the world's greatest devotee of the world's greatest Araragi-senpai, could possibly not listen to what he has to say is completely out of the question. A total fantasy. Get a grip, Araragi-senpai. Do you have any idea how much consternation you could cause with such careless remarks?
No remark of mine could cause the slightest consternation, even if I wanted it to. And no one's hailing you for that. Trust me. Listen, Kanbaru, out of consideration for you as my junior, I'll repeat what I said, since you were most definitely not listening. I'm gonna repeat after me. One day in July, I was standing in a hallway of Kanbaru's house, a Japanese-style home, which I was visiting on my day off. To be precise, I had no choice but to stand in the hallway, like I was being punished for arriving late to school. Naturally, I'd done no such thing. I'd shown up at her house on time at the appointed hour. I was forced to stand there because I simply couldn't enter the room to which she'd led me, so to be precise, I wasn't standing aghast in the hallway so much as I was standing aghast in the hallway so hot. Alright, Kanbaru, listen good.
I already am. I never miss a single word that comes from the wise lips of the great orator Arari-senpai. My only fear is that I'll become so overcome with emotion at what I hear that I'll faint.
I asked you to take me to your room. Choosing for the moment to ignore her tiresome habit of putting me on a pedestal, I pointed at the room through the open sliding door, at the interior. I never asked you to take me to the storage. Messy. Didn't even begin to describe the room's interior. To put it simply, it wasn't just cluttered horizontally but cluttered vertically. No, like I said, it was more than messy, it was chock-full. The total chaos in the room wasn't just a question of area, we're taking about volume here.
Storage? How rude! There are some things that even Aragi-senpai shouldn't say. Though that doesn't happen to be one of them.
So, you don't mind having your room described that way? Well, to be honest, I did hold back in calling it the storage. My actual inclination was to call it a trash compactor. I was starting to wonder if a place like the Kanbaru residence might actually have a trash compactor in it, or maybe it was more like a junkyard, piles of scrap metal towering menacingly overhead. The room somehow seemed to be maintaining this precarious, not to say miraculous, state of balance, but if I impatiently stamped my foot, there might just be a teensy-weensy little avalanche out into the hall, where I therefore continued to stand aghast. not moving a muscle. Suruga Kambaru. My strange bond with the former ace of the Naoitsu high basketball team, a second year, had begun at the end of May. She'd been cronies with Senjo Gahara back in middle school, which also helped bring us closer together. Our relationship isn't actually so simple that such a simple explanation could explain it, though if I can expand on the subject a little, without derailing the story, she also got involved with an aberration, same as me, or more than me, and the vestiges of that remain in her left arm, wrapped up in a bandage, hidden under a bandage. That said, if you forget about all that stuff, or even if you don't, at this point, Suruga Kambar had become my darling junior. Though for someone with no redeeming qualities, a total washout like myself, to refer to a superstar athlete, even a retired one, as darling might be overstepping my bounds. The superlative athlete part aside, however, she was also an undeniably debauched and undisciplined woman. For example, as we're seeing, Suruga Kambaru didn't pick up after herself. The unvarnished truth is that she was a slob. A chaos slob. The first time I was shown into her room, I looked to the heavens for strength and promised that I'd find a time to come back and do a thorough cleanup. It hadn't been all that long ago, but now that I'd found that time and actually come to clean up, the room was in such a state that I couldn't even see the ceiling, let alone the heavens. I'm no slouch when it comes to cleaning and organizing. In fact, I can't relax unless things are nice and orderly, but to be honest, in this case, I didn't even know where to begin. I was frankly at a loss as to how to restore order to this storage of a room. The garbage bags I'd brought from home seemed laughably insufficient. 10 45-gallon bags. What could I possibly accomplish with them? They'd be no use at all. What I needed wasn't garbage bags but cardboard boxes, though if it was cardboard boxes I wanted, this storage seemed a likely enough place to find someday.
Ha! So how will Araragi-senpai go about cleaning up this room? Show me what you've got.
Get off your high horse.
Not at all. More like subterranean.
Terrifying. A voice from underground telling me to show me what you've got. Sounds like the series is heading into a whole new stage. Listen, you knew I was coming to clean up, so you crammed your room full of all the trash from every other room in the house just to fuck with me, didn't you? One way to take care of the housekeeping, I guess. Consolidate all the boxes and useless crap in one room, then clean all the other rooms one at a time. Seems kind of inefficient, like it'd end up requiring twice as much effort, but it would lower the difficulty level of the actual cleaning.
What a thing to say, Araragi-senpai. Now you're just showering me with accusations. Though I'm overjoyed to be showered with anything by you, be it praise.
I'd feel so stupid praising such a girl.
This is the only room I've got. I'm not the kind of spoiled rich kid who's always been allowed multiple rooms. This is my one and only room.
Yeah? Well, thank God for small favors.
Yup, just as Araragi-senpai is my one and only senpai.
That's a lot of pressure. What about Senjo Gahara? How can you call someone you only met a couple of months ago your only senpai in the world? I haven't done anything to deserve that from you, and I probably never will. Wait a minute, though. I mean, it doesn't make sense. With your room like this, where the hell do you sleep?
Here in my room, where else? The only places I would lay my head are this room, Senjo Gahara-senpai's lap, and your outstretched arm, Araragi-senpai.
I don't know about Senjo Gahara's lap, but my arm's no pillow, and this room seems like a no-go too. You can't even get inside, can you?
An amateur like yourself might think so.
Kambaru casually insulted her honored senpai. I'd love to learn to be so insensitive, even if it's from my junior. Well, if she wanted to call me an amateur, I'd ask her to spell it out for me. I'm certainly not an expert in anything. Okay then, let's hear it. How do you manage to sleep in this room? The renowned polymath and genius Leonardo da Vinci is said to have slept standing up, shocking if true. But did Kanbaru do something along those lines? She was something of a genius when it came to sports, at least. And yet, it seemed impossible for anyone, even a genius, to so much as stand up in that room, let alone sleep.
Now I've seen everything, Araragi-senpai. I never expected to live long enough to see the day when I could be the one to teach you something.
You're only 17, plus we haven't even known each other for 100 days. She was already seeing the day, more like. Now quit putting on airs and tell me already. How do you sleep? If the punchline is that you sleep in the hall, I'm gonna kick your ass.
I wish that was the punchline. Boy, I'd love to get my ass kicked by you. I'd love to get a hall slam instead of a wall slam from you.
What's a hall slam? I mean, I get slamming your hand against a wall, like in a rom-com. Geez, we've been talking all this time and I still hadn't set foot inside Kanbaru's room. We're going to run out of tape before the intro's even over. Are we talking about breakfast at Denny's or something? a fluffy buttermilk haul with 2 eggs, sausage and bacon on the side.
Huh. Well, anything's possible. I guess there could be a hallway you'd want to slather with maple syrup, but let's see, you were asking how I sleep, right? Okay, Araragi-senpai. Please look, see that opening over there?
Kanbaru pointed into her room. Sure enough, there was an opening, or a cave dug out of the sheer cliff face. A kind of air pocket, I guess you might say, created by the precarious balance of the piled boxes. Sure, but what about it? You can't possibly be telling me that you sleep in that crevice like a mole or something?
Oh, but I can. If I get a running start in the hallway and do a Fosbury flop, I can get myself in there.
Kanbaru puffed out her chest like she was proud, arching her back like she was doing a Fosbury flop. But leaping backwards into a place like that rather than a mattress or a sandbox could cause the kind of grievous injury that would require immediate medical attention. No need to bend over backwards just to sleep in your room. If it's that much of a pain in the ass, sleep in the hall.
No, Araragi-senpai. The speed with which you come to conclusions is one of your many virtues, but it does sometimes invite lapses in judgment.
I don't need any friendly advice from you, Kanbaru. My only lapse in judgment was agreeing to clean up this room. Well, so it's comfy? Your little cave?
It's comfy.
Even if you don't hurt yourself, it doesn't seem like a pleasant place to sleep. Seems like your body'd be stiff as all hell by the time you woke up. You may not know this, Kanbar, but sleeping is a biological necessity whose general purpose is to rest the mind and body.
I know that. Sure, it may not be the most cushiony place to sleep, but it fits me perfectly like a sleeping bag, so it's surprisingly comfy.
Really?
It can't compare with Senjogahara-senpai's lap, of course, but it's certainly comfier than your arm.
Hold on just a second there. First, let me state unambiguously that I've never once offered you my arm as a pillow, before retorting that being told a mountain of garbage is more comfortable than my arm is beyond dismaying.
Boy, you're rolling up your sleeves to yell at me. No need to get so up in arms over an arm pillow.
Wipe that smile off your face and quit talking nonsense. To begin with, I hadn't rolled up my sleeves. I was wearing short sleeves. It was July, the middle of summer. There was nothing to roll up in the first place.
Well, I may have slightly overstated the case.
You've never not overstated the case. Everything you say is an exaggeration. So, what case specifically did you overstate?
It's true that a mountain of garbage is more comfortable than your arm, but...
She wasn't retracting that part. She also admitted it was a mountain of garbage.
But that comfort is a double-edged sword. Since that cave fits my body so perfectly, there isn't room for someone else to share it with me.
Aching in both senses.
If only you could sleep beside me in my cave, Araragi-senpai, it would outstrip Senjogahara-senpai's lap. The perfect bed. Perfected at last.
Take it down a notch.
I should have pointed this out sooner, but as you said earlier, sleeping is a biological necessity undertaken to rest the mind and body. And in terms of physical needs, sleeping.
Dirty jokes prohibited. The banter had run its course. Having bided my time, I girded my loins, so to speak, and finally turned my hand to cleaning Saruga Kanbari's room. Upon reflection, I had in fact done some light organization the first time I visited Kanbari's room. If I hadn't, there wouldn't even have been anywhere to step. That time, it felt like it'd be dangerous to go barefoot in there like a minefield. Whether it's rooms or thought processes, I know I'm more of a neat freak than most boys, but any human being confronted by that room would have been moved to do something about it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I underestimated the situation and assumed today's task wouldn't be so hard, having completed the preliminary preparations a couple of months ago. If Kanbaru was neither fucking with me nor testing my mettle, then a certain lassitude born of the expectation that Araragi-senpai will clean it up for me was probably to blame for the fact that her room had ended up in this ignominious state in barely over a month. And so as her senpai, as a senpai who should provide guidance to his juniors, the ethical and moral choice may have been to turn right back around and go home without lifting a finger to clean her room. But that's life for you. We all make mistakes. It's a lot harder to stop doing something than it is to start. I didn't want to disappoint Kanbaru, but more importantly, I couldn't let her go on living in a little cavern inside a mountain of trash. Also, her room's initial overwhelming state simply stimulated my desire to clean up, just as it had the month before last. While I had recoiled in horror, if I turned tail, Koyomi Aragi's name would be mud. The cleanup took hours. It's no exaggeration that I started around noon, and night had fallen by the time I was finished. Ultimately, though, I did manage to clear out some breathing room. Frankly, I think some well-placed explosives might have been quicker.
Hold off on the explosives, please. The house is made of wood. The whole thing be blown to bits.
What's so goddamn funny? Just FYI, she didn't help out with the cleanup, one bit only the bare minimum, telling me what was trash and what wasn't from the sidelines. Anyone observing us during those hours would have been convinced that she was the senpai and that a junior had come over to help her move. Compelled to do so under great duress. I'm pretty sure your grandparents would happily give me permission to carry out a bombing raid to get this mess cleaned up.
You just don't get it. You have no idea how precious those books are.
They're the first to go. First or not, it was a holiday, so there was no trash pickup. All I could do was tie up all the unwanted crap with string or whatever and leave it in the courtyard, nothing to do but pray that it didn't rain before trash day. I wonder if I should help take out their trash as well, though maybe that was over the line. Don't want to get too involved in another family's affairs. Anyway, good work, Kanbaru. To be honest, I was the only one who'd done any work at all, be it good or bad, but I couldn't come up with anything else. We did it. Didn't seem quite right either, and if I'm being generous, I can see how watching someone else clean up for that long might constitute work in its own way. Me, I hate it when someone else cleans my room, but with Kanbaru, who knows, maybe she loved every minute of it. I really don't get this girl's character at all. Seriously, what's her deal? Okay, I'm headed home. It's already completely dark out, no need to overstay my welcome.
Hold it right there, Araragi-senpai, young man.
I'm sorry, but that's just not the kind of thing you say to your senpai. She speaks in such a robust and cheerful manner that it's hard to tell, but apart from calling me her dear senior, she doesn't have time for actual polite speech.
Do you really think I'd let an esteemed senpai just clean my room and go home? Especially when that senpai is you, finest of them all?
Let. Exactly what are you planning to do to me? To me?
Why be so alarmed?
What do you take me for, Kanbaru said, pouting. Why be pouting? She'd given me plenty of reason to be alarmed.
I just wanted to serve you some tea. Tea won't cut it. A little supper, Araragi-senpai.
Supper? Oh, you mean dinner? No, I'm fine. I'm pretty sure they've got dinner waiting for me at home.
I can't allow that. You're not permitted to be fine.
What? I can't be fine without someone's permission? My juniors?
Understand that until you've eaten my grandmother's home-cooked supper, you won't be leaving this mansion.
Is that a threat? And what the hell, her grandmother's home cooking? A little supper, she says, but she's not even going to make it herself, though any way you slice it, Kanbaru doesn't seem like the type to be any good at cooking. Her grandmother made the lunch she gave me that other time, too. While cooking and cleaning may both come under the heading of housework, they are not, of course, directly linked. Still, someone skilled at cooking would, at the very least, be unable to remain impassive in the face of a room in such a disastrous state. They say the kitchen is the baseline for household mess, and once that starts to go, it's all over.
Or will you try and force your way out? Co-ed. Try it. I wonder, though, do you have the agility to best me?
Kanbaru spread her arms wide and stood on the threshold, as if she was taking a defensive stance in a basketball game, clueless about proper etiquette in a traditional Japanese home. Didn't she know it was rude to stand there?
Come at me. I may be retired, but my defense hasn't gotten so lax that I'll let an amateur like you get by me.
I'm not coming at anyone, okay? And you know, for someone who respects me, she seems a bit too committed to calling me an amateur. It would have been one thing if I were vampiricized from giving Shinobu some of my blood. But since I wasn't, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of breaking through her defense. Seemed like my only option was to go along quietly. Well, I wouldn't be much of a senpai if I brushed off the kindness, or the gratitude of my junior. To be honest, having consistently refused to participate in clubs or sports since middle school, I was unaccustomed to the very experience of being treated like a senpai and didn't know how you acted like one in the first place. I couldn't gauge the distance between us very well. I guess I'd ask Sanjagahara next time I saw her. Was it okay to spend my entire day off cleaning my junior's room and then to get treated to dinner by way of thanks? Or was that a no-go? That one doted on Kanbaru like a pet cat, though. Okay, you win. Kanbaru, you got me. I give up.
You can't throw in the towel yet. You've still got an opening. This is no time to give up.
Just what exactly do you want me to do?
Grapple with me.
I thought you were on the basketball team, not the sumo team. If I lost a sumo bout to a girl, and to my junior no less, my name really would be Mud. So taking her pep talk, with due respect, as just that, talk. I'll stay for dinner then. I just need to call my folks.
If that's how you feel, I suppose I have no objection.
Answered Kanbur, sounding strangely magnanimous. She hadn't gotten to grapple with me but seemed pleased that everything had, on the whole, gone according to her wishes. And if my junior's day off had been a satisfying one, well then, I couldn't be happier. Let's leave it at that.
Now then, Araragi-senpai, before you take your seat at the supper table. Go take a bath! You can't show up to our dining room like that, you look filthy.
Even I know that you don't call the place where you eat in a traditional Japanese home a dining room, but since I have no earthly idea what you do call it, I decided to refrain from pointing that out. And, regardless of the nature of our relationship, Kambaro was absolutely right that it would be bad manners to show up at dinner completely covered in dust from a day of intensive cleaning, so I was actually grateful that she'd said something. I had very nearly behaved most indelicately in someone else's home, but at the same time, I would never have conceived of using the bath at that someone's home, so you can imagine my consternation as I sat there in the tub. Consternation? Or a feeling of immorality, maybe? I felt like I was transgressing some deep-seated taboo. It was a cypress bath, I think. A splendid bath, commensurate with their splendid home. The bathroom was big enough that it wouldn't have been out of place in a modest inn, and getting to take a bath in there felt like more than ample repayment for the day's hard work. But it still felt odd, submerged up to my neck, enjoying a relaxing soak at the home of a junior I didn't know that well. Even Senjo Gahara, whose sensibilities were a little off, would opt for not if I asked her whether or not this was okay. Though if I actually brought it up, she'd probably kill me. Death by office supply, rubbed out by an erasable ballpoint pen, though I wasn't sure exactly how that would work. I took a look at the waterproof clock, which was somewhat incongruous with the cypress bath or conversely, which served as a reminder that this was a private home and not an inn. I wasn't so much worried about the hour as I was pondering how long I had until this supper. It seemed like Kambaru hadn't planned to host a dinner party for me. She'd just hit on the idea in the moment and gotten her grandmother's permission after the fact. It must have been a real hassle for her grandmother to suddenly be making dinner for me as well. I'm sure she thought I was an overweening senpai, but she must be a kind-hearted woman, because she apparently gave the okay. I'm very grateful. That is, terribly sorry. Damn it. I can't relax. There was plenty of room to stretch out. The water was the perfect temperature. That was all great. I have no intention of retracting my earlier statement that this was more than ample repayment for my hard work. When it comes to someone else's shampoo and conditioner and soap, however, I can't relax. Man, am I uptight? Well, I'll get out as soon as I'm all warmed up, I told myself. But that was when a sound came from the changing room.
What's this? The door won't open. It's locked. What's going on, Araragi-senpai? Are you all right? I'll save you.
Someone was frantically rattling the door handle. A hoodlum was attempting to break into the changing room.
Open this door. Come out with your hands up. This is your last warning.
Or maybe it was the police?
I am Saruga Kambaru, Araragi-senpai's sex slave. My signature move is the triangle jump.
Nope, a hoodlum.
Why won't this open? I guess I've got no choice. I'll be back in a sec with that stick the SW team uses for breaking down doors.
Enough already. And don't bring something if you don't even know what it's called. Though, it's not like I know either.
Oh, what's this you're unharmed? Araragi-senpai.
After my retort, the violent banging finally ceased. She sounded sincerely concerned for my well-being, though that doesn't excuse her initial attempt to break into the changing room. I'd shouted from inside the bath. My voice as it echoed off the walls was kind of unsettling, but I needed to talk loud enough for my voice to reach her through 2 doors, across the changing room. For her part, Kanbadura always spoke in a voice that was plenty loud enough to carry that far.
You gave me quite a scare, Araragi-senpai. I was really worried you were being held captive in there.
You're pretty much the only person in the world who'd hold me captive.
I don't think so. There's always Senjo Gahara-senpai.
Aha, not a chance. Whatever else she might do, Senjo Gahara wouldn't go that far.
But how come the door won't open?
Because I locked it, obviously. She acted surprised. Or maybe she really was surprised. But Kambabor barging in while you were in the bath was a probable scenario for anyone who knew her. Locking the door was a natural precaution.
Lock? There's a lock on the changing room door?
Kambaro seemed genuinely taken aback. It's your house. How can you not know that?
I mean, when I take baths, I just leave the changing room door open.
That's leaving yourself a little too open, don't you think? Though it's fundamentally up to you how you want to behave in your own home. That is, I was the one who was buck naked in someone else's home, even if I was in the bath.
There seems to be some sort of misunderstanding here, Araragi-senpai, so allow me to clear it up. I only came because I wanted to get into the bath with you.
Nope, no misunderstanding. Nothing to clear up.
I misspoke. I only wanted to wash your clothes for you while you were in the bath, Araragi-senpai. My conscience is clean.
Her conscience could use a bath, and even if she was telling the truth, I had a hard time believing that the person who was responsible for the room that had made my clothes so filthy was any good at doing laundry. She could very well be even worse at it than cooking.
What? I'm a jock. I've been playing sports my whole life, so I've always done tons of laundry. You might even call it my forte.
That's a fair point. Still, if you wash my clothes, I won't have anything to wear.
Just come out naked then. It's fine.
It's not fine. I don't have that much confidence in my body.
If you like, in addition to your clothes, I can wash your body for you, from in front and behind.
The sound-only aspect really amplified this girl's perviness, and the fact that I was buck naked only served to double my, what would you call it, visceral sense of impending danger.
I'm saying that in return for cleaning my room, I want to clean your body, Araragi-senpai.
You should worry about getting your mind clean first. How can it be so filthy when you're using such a great bath every day?
Well, I can't deny that it's a great bath. I'm sure it'd just be off-putting if I pretended to be humble about it.
She only hears the positive parts. I could see her proud smile in my mind's eye. Then again, it was definitely a bath to be proud of.
It's not just the bath, though. The water itself is great too, isn't it? We pass the water up from the well in the garden and then heat it. It may not be from a natural hot spring, but it's deep, something water full of something.
What the hell is that supposed to mean? If you're so proud of it, at least learn the proper terms. Was it like mineral water or something? Well, water isn't necessarily mineral water, but oddly enough, when she'd said that, I started to feel like the water filling the cypress tub really was special. Well water, huh?
Oh, speaking of which, Araragi-senpai,
What is it, Camber Kohai?
that water has something of a past, you know?
Something overcast? Listen, you're the only thing around here that's dreary.
Not something overcast, something of a past.
Oh yeah? Well, either way, she really was something. But, well, water with something of a past? What was that supposed to mean? Sure, it passes up the well, but what past? What kind of a past are we talking about?
My, interested are we?
I don't know about interested. When someone brings up something like that, how else do you respond? Though if there was a story behind the water I was currently immersed in, I certainly wanted to hear it. Purely out of curiosity. Okay, fine. I'm interested in this so-called past. Why not? And by the way, right now you're being something of a pest.
It's a story about my father.
Wow, your fav. Urkambaru threw it into the conversation so naturally that I almost didn't think anything of it. But her father, passed away many years ago. Not just her father, but her mother too, together. In a car accident. Which is why Kanbaru lives with her grandparents. Their only son was Kanbaru's father.
Naturally, my father bathed in that bath. Not just the bath, but the well water too daily.
Not knowing how to respond to this, I fell silent, but Kanbaru just went on telling me this story about her father from the far side of 2 intervening doors. She must have accepted his passing as a fact of life by now, in which case handling the subject with kid gloves might be rude or from Kanbaru's perspective vexing. Daily, huh?
Yup. Since he used it all the time, I guess my father didn't treat the water as anything to be particularly grateful for.
Well, stands to reason. As someone who lives in a regular house, I was jealous that they had a well at all. Or at least, I thought it was cool. But if you had one in your yard your whole life, of course you wouldn't be grateful. It's just there.
But from the time he was a little kid on in a blue moon, something caught his attention while he was taking a bath.
Caught his attention?
A certain phenomenon might be a better way to put it.
Not quite aberration-related, but a mysterious phenomenon. Kanbari elaborated. Not quite aberration level, but mysterious? That's awfully, or very specific. I tensed up somewhat in the tub. I mean, if the well water involved an aberration in some way, that could spell big trouble, even apart from the fact that I was personally submerged in it at that very moment. Using water with that kind of a past on a daily basis didn't seem like a great idea.
I'm telling you, Araragi-senpai, it's not aberration related. It doesn't involve aberrations.
Right? Non-arbitration related, aberration unrelated? A mysterious phenomenon that doesn't involve aberrations? Actually, I guess they're a dime a dozen. Man-made phenomena. Or natural phenomena. Such things were eminently possible. The question was how dangerous they might be. In other words, just because it wasn't aberration-related didn't guarantee that this thing Kanbara was telling me about was safe. Sure, but the monkey aberration that you wished on was left to you by your parents. So no, was it just your mother?
Yep, it was my mother. Your memory is remarkable, Araragi-senpai. Not that I'm surprised.
Being complimented after I had to correct myself just makes me feel shitty, actually.
Back in the day, I thought remark meant mark again.
Truly remarkable. Togen. I think that was it. Or, that's how my decidedly unremarkable memory remembers it, Saruga Kanbara's deceased mother's name. I don't think she ever told me her father's name. And now seemed like an awkward time to be asking her. So what was this mysterious phenomenon that didn't involve any aberration? What are we dealing with here, Kanbari? Depending on your answer, I might need to get out of this bath sooner, rather than later.
No need to be on edge, Araragi-senpai. Don't worry, it's not a scary story. It's not a ghost story or anything.
Not a ghost story. Hearing that didn't put my mind at ease. I still had the lingering influence of an aberration in my body, after all supposing, and I know this might seem like a wild thought, but supposing the well was filled with holy water or something, my body might just melt. But Kanbaru also had an aberration lingering in her body, so if she could bathe without incident, then there was nothing to worry about. Except she's a raging masochist, and she might enjoy the pain from her body melting a little bit. What a caveat. Except she's a raging masochist. One hell of an aberration. Truly abnormal and irrational. Able to be doubted again.
Sure, if you want to get out, I won't stop you. And if you want to come out of the changing room naked, I won't stop you either.
Do stop me.
But first, Araragi-senpai, I want you to look at the surface of the water you're in.
I didn't know what she was up to, but I reflexively did as Kanba said. Not that I had to do much, since most of my body was immersed, and the water was already taking up most of my field of vision. I looked. It's a little late to be asking this, but what's up with the water?
It's not the water.
Huh? What is it then? I guess for baths you call it ayu instead of water, but...
No, that's not what I meant. Look, I already told you it's not the water that I want you to look at.
It's the surface of the water, she reminded me. The surface? This little tidbit shocked me when I first heard it, but apparently the concept of oyu doesn't exist in English. Or rather, there isn't a separate word for it. The distinction between oyu and water is expressed as hot water and cold water, and they're basically treated as the same thing. It's inconceivable to me, as someone raised in Japan, not to have a distinct word for oyu, but from a foreign perspective, maybe the ambiguity of our word for water, mizu, is itself troubling. We make a distinction between oyu and mizu, but at the same time, oyu is mizu dash, and while mizu refers to o, it can also refer to liquids in general. No, forget about troubling. When you really think about it, that's downright disturbing. Anyway, Mademoiselle Hitagi Senjogahara, who shared that disturbing truth with me, also told me to drop dead.
Dead. Dead. Dead. Dead. Dead. Dead. Dead. Dead.
Eek. She's terrifying whether it's sound only or the full sensory experience. She starts out cranked to the max, so it doesn't make much of a difference anyway. I very nearly dropped my cell phone but somehow hung on and said, I can't die yet. We've only just fallen for each other. We've only just started going out. I want to go on so many more dates with you. It would be too painful to let go of life at this point.
Well now, that's a very nice thing to say. Fine, you don't have to die yet.
You're too soft, Miss Senjogahara. Tell me to drop dead at least a couple more times. Actually, she could quit being so open about her murderous desires if she was just going to back off at the drop of a hat, but whatever. In any case, I ended up going over to Kanbara's today to clean up. Ultimately, I got out of the bath and partook of Kanbara's reward, namely the supper party that she held for me. By the time we were done eating, it was quite late, and they were about to lay out a bed for me. But on that, at least, I held firm and somehow made it home before the clock struck midnight. I got a lecture from my little sisters for staying out so late. Usually when they lecture me, it unfolds into a bloody civil war. But luckily for them, I was too tired this time. The bath had done a fair job of washing away the fatigue of cleaning Kanbara's room, but I was worn out from the tension of the supper that followed. So ignoring my little sisters, I headed to my room intending to fall asleep right away. When I went to plug in my cell phone, however, I saw that I'd gotten an email and not noticed. An email from Senjogahara. I could ignore my sisters, but not an email from her. Because she's scary partly, but we've been going out since the month before last. So, even if she weren't, I wouldn't just ignore her. Given the time, I figured it was a good night message. But judging from the subject line, I hear you were in Kanbaru's room. It had more to do with surveillance. There was nothing in the body. Even the way she used email was scary. Maybe it was a good night forever message. And so I ended up calling Senjogahara and giving a detailed report of the day's activities, faithfully and accurately. It'd be terrifying if I got caught in a lie and there was a dreadfully open line of communication through the mental hotline that connected the newly reborn Valhalla duo, so any lie would most definitely be detected. In that sense, maybe they should have been called the Valhalla Duotector. I was thoroughly whipped. No, forget about whipped. I was downtrodden. They were walking all over me. Kanbari treated me as a headrest, and Senjogahara treated me as a doormat. I didn't have one iota of dignity in a safe deposit. Not a kayabai. Sentry in a safe deposit posits. Would be constituted be a sentry of the dark odd and not air too. My docubetter. I wanted to ask Hanekawa to save me, but if Senjogahara was monitoring me, Hanekawa supervising me, if she wasn't already riding to the rescue, then she had no intention of saving me this time whether I asked her to or not. While I hadn't told Senjogahara that I was going to Kanbara's house to clean, hence Kanbara's report to her, I had duly informed Hanekawa in advance. Yikes. Seriously, what the hell has happened to my life? Zero free will. I have to wonder, my decision to buckle down and study so that I could go to the same college as Senjogahara, was it really my own?
Going to clean your junior's room for her. Well, aren't you the helpful one? Araragi taking a bath, though, that's over the line. I think you really ought to drop dead.
Don't think that.
It's better than thinking I'm going to kill you, isn't it?
Sure, but
So, Araragi, what did you make of Kambaru's story? The story, not the water. Look at the surface. That one.
Oh, right. My intention was to tell her what had happened faithfully and accurately, so I included the story as well, but not said anything about what I made of it. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird story. Or maybe not weird? I guess I should call it a romantic story, since Kambaru's father saw the face of his future wife on the surface. That was the story. From the time he was little, Kambaru's father had seen the figure of an unfamiliar woman when he bathed in that cypress tub. Not always, mind you. Only occasionally, but either way, the woman with whom he'd eloped one day was reflected for him there on the surface. He didn't pay it much mind, since it was clearly some sort of illusion, and at some point he stopped seeing it. What, if anything, the illusion meant kept on tugging at some corner of his mind. However, so he had quite a shock the first time he laid eyes on Kanbar's mother, on Togain. In other words, almost as if they'd been destined to meet. Sounds like the kind of charm girls would be into. Wasn't there one like that, where you'd fill the sink with water, and it would reflect the face of your future husband or something? The story was about Kambaru's dad, so instead of a girl I ended up picturing a man in the prime of life, but the story took place when he was a kid, plus, they got married quite young, so it didn't feel that off. Romantic. You could call it that, sure. From the smattering of knowledge I'd acquired as a high school student, just dipping his toes into the world of exam prep. A liquid surface could function as a sort of screen, but in that case, seeing his soulmate, or even just the face of someone he'd meet in the future, was pretty crazy. This wasn't like the sandbox. Water is, of course, even more protean than sand. And while the cypress tub may have been an antique, there was of course nothing funny going on with the bottom of it.
So when you looked at the surface of the water, like Kanbaru asked, who did you see reflected there? Me? Or me? Or was it me? Hanekawa, Kanbaru, Lilaho, Chikuji.
You're scaring me. I was quaking with fear. I didn't see anyone. The only thing I saw was a normal reflection of my own face.
What? Are you trying to tell me that your soulmate is your precious self?
Oh, shut up. What do you mean, my precious self? She always maintained such a level tone. Why was this the only time she managed to sound properly surprised?
There was a story like that, wasn't there? A myth where a guy was so enamored of his own reflection that he drowned himself. What was it again?
You know perfectly well. You're just trying to get me to say that I'm a narcissist.
Here's another story. Once there was a dog that was carrying some meat in his mouth. When he saw his own reflection in the river, he wanted the meat that was in the water too. So he started barking, And when he did the meat and his mouth fell into the river and was washed away. That kind of foolishness is what they call Aragism.
That's not a word. Don't try to make me the gold standard for foolishness. Anyway, the water just looked like regular water to me, and the surface seemed totally normal too.
So even though you're a vampire, surfaces reflect your image.
No, I'm not a vampire anymore. I just have some lingering after effects. My reflection appears in regular old mirrors too.
That reminds me, didn't they say vampires can't cross rivers and can't swim and stuff like that? Are you able to swim, Araragi?
Well, I haven't tried, but wonder, I probably can, right? What about Shinobu though? While she was a little girl, her vampiric level seemed higher than mine. I got the sense that she was at the mercy of her identity. Well, whether or not an aberration was involved, it's still a pretty strange story. It'd be one thing if it were her mother, but her father. Not like I know all about her mother, but the simple fact that she bequeathed the monkey to Kanbari suggested she had some connection to all that. Especially considering how Kanbar's seemingly sound grandparents despised her even before she stole their only son from them.
It seems more like a curse than a charm, commented Senjogahara. Sending your image to your soulmate.
You make it sound so scary. What are you trying to make Kanbara's mother out to be?
Juiced. Kidding. Hello.
Right, of course you are.
I'd already heard that story from Canberra, though.
Huh? Just gonna drop that into the conversation, eh? How about a fact is, at the beginning there, or something?
What? It's not like I told you I hadn't heard it. Me and Kombaro go way back. Of course I know about stuff like that. Seeing as you only just met her, if you knew something about her that I didn't, that's what would be shocking.
As far as I could tell from this defense, she'd heard the story back in middle school, not after the recent rebirth of the Valhalla duo. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to savor how ridiculous you were, proudly relating to me this story you'd heard from Kanbari. That's the cruelest thing I've ever heard. So damn cruel, even when she didn't mean any harm. What kind of a person was she?
Well, the truth is that I'd heard it but totally forgotten about it. I remembered partway through. Like, oh yeah, that rings a bell then again, back when I was the one getting invited to Camber's house, and being allowed to use the bath and stuff. I was a good kid, so I never said anything uncouth.
Huh? Uncouth? What's she talking about?
Of course, unlike you, I did share the tub with Kambaro. Jealous, aren't you?
That's not what I want to ask about? Senjo Gahara and Kanbaro in the bath together? Not jealous at all, more like scared. Don't want to go anywhere near that. What do you mean you didn't say anything uncouth?
I'm telling you I had a good personality at the time. In other words, I wasn't a low-down, twisted, unpleasant woman. Like I am now.
I gasped. A little too self-aware, are we?
I'm saying that I didn't boorishly offer my analysis of a love story that was romantic, and not a tale of an aberration.
The epilogue, or maybe the punchline of this story. We don't need to fall back on the Greek myth of Narcissus to say that people love themselves in a biological sense in addition to self-love or self-infatuation. They do so out of an instinctual hereditary drive to pass on their genes to future generations. People hold themselves in high esteem. They idealize themselves. Senjo Gahara was the one who said this. Huh? What? So, are you trying to tell me Kanbaru's father thought his own reflection in the bathwater was his soulmate? I mean, come on, that can't be.
Why not?
Because it's idiotic.
Exactly, it's an idiotic story. And pointing that out is like calling Kambaru's father an idiot. So, I didn't tell Kambari. I wouldn't say something that harsh even now, so of course I wouldn't, when I was in middle school.
That's on the level of the fable you told about the dog. He'd realize, how could anyone in the world not recognize his or her own face?
No one in the world knows it that intimately. The face you see in the mirrors flipped left to right. In photographs and videos, the colours and sense of depth are completely different. We ourselves are actually the ones who are least familiar with the US that people see.
That's not what we're talking about here.
For example, Araragi, people from other families all look alike, right? But the members of those families don't think so. You and your sisters look disturbingly alike, but I bet you don't think you look all that similar.
Disturbingly? Thanks for that. Though I guess I see what you mean. But aren't you just saying that it's easier to tell people apart if you're used to seeing them than if you're not? Like how a counterfeit might fool a layman, but an expert would be able to tell the difference.
Yeah. Well, no, but it'll do.
No? Whatever. Anyone looking at a face, reflected in the water, would at least be able to tell if it's their own.
Not really. In a mirror, maybe, but watery surfaces moving, sparkling, it's blurry, it's not the same as looking in a mirror. You've heard of the uncanny valley, right? How with CG or robots or whatever, the more human-like you make them look, the less human they seem, the dissimilarity actually becomes more distinct, and they start to seem creepier. I think you'll agree that my metaphor is more accurate.
The uncanny valley.
They also say that once you cross the uncanny valley, the feeling of intimacy grows by leaps and bounds. Though I've heard incest and hating your kin are rooted in the same sort of reasons. The point is, your own image, reflected on water, cannot look like you. They make mirrors that are rigged so the reflection isn't flipped left to right, but apparently most people who look in them think, that's not me. And they say people experience a similar disconnect when they see the reflection of a close friend or relative.
So he didn't perceive the self he saw reflected in the bathwater as himself because it wasn't the self he took for granted from constantly seeing it in the mirror?
Yes. And if you only saw it occasionally, mightn't that blurry self look like a girl?
I mean, that's possible, I guess, since when you're a little kid, the difference between genders is a lot less obvious. It's a fine answer if we're talking about the kind of charms or fortune-telling that girls are into. But once you're a grown-up, or once you've reached a certain level of discernment, you'd realize what was going on.
And he did. Which is why he stopped seeing her at a certain point.
But it's another question entirely whether you connect that to recollections of seeing such a thing in the past. Her father must have retained his memory of discerning someone's image in the water, and thought that it was his soulmate. That's a hell of an assumption, though I guess the dad we're talking about here is Kambaru's dad.
You've got it backwards. He met someone who seemed like his soulmate, and she reminded him of the reflection he'd seen in the water all those years ago.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, you must be right for a third party discussing this in hindsight. The cause and effect are backwards, but that's not how he felt. As far as he knew, he finally found the answer to a puzzle from his childhood.
Love aside, we tend to seek out people like ourselves. So,
Senjogahara left off there. Instead,
this is all just my interpretation, of course.
she summed it up. That summation may have been her way of hiding her embarrassment or of apologizing for being unable to swallow a romantic story without analyzing it first. There was no way of knowing the truth. It was just her interpretation, not the solution. She'd said accordingly. Kanbara and her father saw it one way, and she saw it another way. That was all. Senjogahara had decided that Papa Kanbara's interpretation was unlikely or impossible, but conversely he might think her quibbling explanation. And the fact that Kambaru's father had only ever seen her in that bathen, that well water, in other words, could lend credence to the idea that there really was something mysterious about the water itself. Senjogahara would likely dismiss the specificity of the location with an interpretation like a greater chance for tricks of the light. And I have to say I'm with her. I'm also the type who can't accept romantic notions at face value, who needs to nitpick them all the way down the line. So I wasn't inclined to say anything uncouth, to use her word, about her take on it in that regard. Maybe Senjogahara and I were a couple of peas in a pod couple, and peas in a pod.
Well, goodbye. Good night. See you at school tomorrow.
Was not how Senjogahara signed off.
If you say one wrong word to Kambara, I'll kill you. I'll never forgive you. Even if it was a slip of the tongue, you'd be better off killing yourself before tomorrow morning.
Then my girlfriend hung up. I seriously don't get her. I thought as I placed a second call, this time to Kanbari, figuring that it was still probably just early enough. The pretext for the call was to report that I'd gotten home safely, but the truth was that there was also something I wanted to ask her. Believe me, I had no intention of saying one wrong word. I didn't particularly feel like killing myself before dawn. Hey Kambaru, I meant to ask, what about you? When you look into that bathwater, what do you see? The reason I asked, if her father's interpretation was correct, then Kanbara would see her future mate reflected there. If Senjogahara's interpretation was correct, however, what my junior saw reflected there might be her mother? Togain. Kanbara might see her, just like her father had, in the rippling image of herself reflected on the surface. She might well see the mother whose blood ran in her veins. The mother who'd had such an enormous influence on my junior's life, who affected her even now through that left arm. But then, I have no idea which of her parents she resembles more. so for all I knew it could be her father she saw there. Depending on the movement of the water, she might even see both of them, Mom and Dad. She might even see the two of them there together. And if so, that really was romantic, in its own way. Her departed parents, together, reunited in her eyes.
Oh, I see my own boobs, of course, which are really sexy if I do say so myself. I spend the entire time I'm in the bath staring at them. The contrast with my abs is really evocative, and I oversoak myself on a nightly basis sitting there captivated by the sight. To be honest, nothing else enters my eyes. But why do you ask, Araragi-senpai eyes?
What does Nadeko Sengoku, a girl in her second year of middle school, think about roads? Does she even think about them at all? I'm forced to conclude that she probably doesn't. I'm just making an assumption, of course, and depending on how you look at it, that might be a very rude thing to say. But a girl who always keeps her head down, who goes through life with eyes downcast, doesn't see the road. The only thing she sees is her own 2 feet. She's a shoegazer. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Please don't misunderstand, I'm not trying to be critical having walked. Sometimes even run through life with my eyes completely shut. How could someone like me, with quite literally no foresight, take issue with Sengoku, who has lived with her eyes fixed on her feet by hook or by crook, or rather, head-on without a wayward glance? As someone who avoids looking at any part of himself, feet included, and who as a result lost sight of himself completely, I should be praising rather than criticizing Sengoku and her perpetually down-turned gaze. Step by step, always staring down at her feet at her shoes, regardless of where she's coming from or where she's going. In a sense, in every sense, that's a grueling life. Life can be like that. Life is like that. It's not for you or me to dismiss, at least to dismiss out of hand. Still, while hers may be a life, is she walking the path of humanity? Sengoku, who doesn't know what path she's following, who doesn't even know the name of the road she's on, has nothing to say about humanity. The most important thing I want to point out about the way Nadeko Sengoku goes through life, however, is that if you live your life with your head down, if you're always focused on your feet, then you might manage to avoid falling or tripping or straying from the path, but you can't avoid running into things unless you watch where you're going. And there's this, which may not be all that important, but talk of humanity aside, when you take the low road, the path of the snake, as in a real snake, there are no feet in sight.
Pardon me for intruding, Big Brother Koyomi.
Oh, it's you. Thanks for coming by, Sengoku. Come on in.
It is an intrusion, isn't it? Nadeko will just head home.
You can't leave. You just got here.
It's been fun.
Not yet, it hasn't?
It was the greatest day ever.
You get that much of a kick out of taking off your shoes in our front hall? Have you found the secret to happiness? One day in early August during summer break, a day when a case involving a certain swindler had been settled for the moment, and my little sister's friend Nadeko Sengoku had come by the house as promised. The excuse was that I'd gotten intel on the swindler from Sengoku, and now I was going to give her the rundown on what happened along with a proper thank you. The correct thing probably would have been for me to go to her house to express my gratitude, but when I went to hang out over there last month, despite the fact that we had a great time playing the game of life, things eventually got weird, and I ended up kind of fleeing from Sengoku's mother, so I didn't really have a strong inclination to head that way again. Animal instinct, perhaps, or aberrational instinct, which is why I called Sengoku up and invited her over to our house. I thought about meeting her on the road and giving her an escort back, but that's okay, was the response I got. I mean, she'd come over to our place with Kanbari month before last, so she knew where it was, and she used to come over all the time to see my sister when they were in elementary school anyway. If she could get here on her own, no need to be overbearing, spare the road and spoil the child. Nevertheless, Sengoku isn't the most reliable kid, so I was a little anxious that she wouldn't show up at the appointed hour, and if she didn't, I had every intention of pulling out all the stops to find her, but the doorbell rang at precisely the appointed time. She was so punctual that it almost seemed like she'd been waiting outside the gate monitoring the atomic clock or something. She didn't have a cell phone though, so that wasn't possible. Maybe she'd synchronized her watch with it before she left the house. Well, no, I guess no one's that anal. Every single one of Sengoku's phone calls is precisely at the top of the hour in my cell's log, but that's obviously just a coincidence too. Anyway, come in. It's fine. I cleaned my room and everything.
Okay.
Everything's set, so we can party all night.
Eek.
I'd meant this as a joke to make her feel more relaxed, since she seemed anxious about being at my house despite knowing me for so long, but she'd taken it literally and shrunk back in terror. She was quaking in her boots. Then again, in the 6 months since our reunion, I'd never really seen Sengoku not panic-stricken. Sengoku equals panic-stricken. This was her personality, so maybe there was nothing I could do about it. I guess I just needed to keep a close watch over her from here on out. When I'd been the one darkening her door, she'd had her bangs pulled up with a hairband, but today, perhaps because she'd walked here, she was in her default mode, bangs down over her face. I couldn't even get a glimpse of her expression. So to be perfectly honest, I had no idea what she was really feeling. From the looks of it, she was being bashful or maybe reserved, but it was equally possible that she was just repulsed. If she felt at a loss, like she couldn't refuse the persistent invitations of her friend's older brother, and ended up somewhere she didn't want to be, I couldn't feel worse. That is, what a big misunderstanding. I want to believe that wasn't what was going on. If she'd only be a little more frank, it would make everything okay seriously, even just 1% as frank as Kanbur. Just when Senjo Gahara's acid tongue, or dispiritingly acrimonious disposition, was showing signs of mellowing, promising to go into remission after the conman case, I just couldn't face being hated by my little sister's friend. It would impede my exam prep. Come on, get those shoes off already. Come in already.
Ah, right. Okay, off they come. Whatever you say, anything at all.
How so timid? If she hated me, I suppose there was nothing I could do about it. But could she please not bring undue suspicion on me with her antics? Anyway, whether she was being bashful, or watchful, or just plain waffling, Sengoku somehow made it across the threshold and followed me right on up to the second floor. Tsuki was supposed to be here too, but apparently she's still stuck mopping up.
And mopping up? After what?
That swindler. Obviously, not like I know what that actually means. Yeah, I have no idea what Karen or Tsuki is thinking. Nor what Sengoku is. I just don't understand how middle school girls think. I guess, though, that's a real can of worms. How can you ever really know what anyone else is thinking? Even Shinobu, with our link and everything, I can't say I understand her.
Wow! It's true. It's a party. You're throwing the Deco a party.
At long last, after a whole stack of waffling, it took us 30 minutes to go a distance of not even 30 steps. Sengoku finally started to sound happy and excited when she got to my room, though it was less about the room and more about the snacks and juice spread out on the floor. It was pretty modest as parties go, and there wasn't any surprise element. In fact, the warm welcome I'd received at Sengoku's house the other day had been a few notches more lavish, but I was just glad that it made her happy. Though it was actually my sister who'd done all the preparation for this party, not me. It was after she put the finishing touches on it that she'd gone out to mop up after that swindler. Part of me hated her thoroughness, but maybe it was only to be expected from someone who'd become the boss of all the middle school girls in the area. Shown Adeko the same good time I would. Tsuki had directed me quite the direction when it came from your own little sister.
Whoa, popcorn. Nice. Let's stuff our faces full of popcorn. Nadeko's gonna pack it in till she can't breathe. Then swallow it without chewing.
You'll die.
Dreamy.
Sengoku squatted down, sounding entranced. I was a little surprised anyone could be so happy about snacks. Maybe she wasn't allowed to eat sweets at home? Given how cloyingly sweet her parents were to her, it was surprising indeed. Hup, Sengoku plopped down on a cushion and started taking off her socks, both left and right. Apparently she wanted to be barefoot, and she was, before I could finish the pho. She carefully folded her socks and laid them next to her. She took off her socks, almost like people take off their hats indoors. But, hang on. I don't know. Is there some rule of etiquette that you take off your socks when you're in someone else's room? I had very little experience being in other people's rooms, so it didn't help much by way of comparison. I was always only going to Senjo Gahara's or Kanbar's room, and in Kanbar's case, never mind socks, you could get hurt if you went in there without work boots.
Why, you said Tsuki had gone out?
It was clearly taking Sengoku everything she had to restrain an overwhelming urge to go buck wild on the smorgasbord of snacks laid out before her. Somehow managing to set aside her desire to shove her face full of popcorn at the earliest possible opportunity, she asked.
What about Karen?
Her too. They're a package deal. True, the difference in size made it hard to bundle them together, so they might not be easy to sell as a set. What to do with them? Nothing, some people would say. It just wasn't something you did to your little sisters.
You're good parents.
Well, that's a very polite way of putting it. No, my good parents are also out, that is, at work. Holidays, summer break, their jobs don't have anything to do with those things, by which I mean they don't have any of those things.
Really? Then it's just the two of us today, Big Brother Koyami.
Well, since you put it that way, yeah, it's just the two of us. Something wrong with that?
Of course not. Tee hee 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 hee.
Sengoku giggled adorably. Finally. I guess she was so tense because she was worried about my parents. Other people's parents are definitely a source of tension, that's for sure. I'd had a hell of a time with Senjogahara's dad, and even if we don't bring that in, I did run away from Sengoku's mother. And while I'm totally used to it now, to the point that I'll go hang out with him even when Kanber isn't there, at first her grandparents made me nervous too. Well, first off, welcome, Sengoku. I poured juice into the 2 glasses I'd set out, and handing one to Sengoku, we started off with a toast.
Yeah, Nadeko is welcome, Big Brother Koyomi. Cheers. Happy birthday.
My birthday's in April.
I see. It's all taken care of. Nice. See?
Naturally, I couldn't share everything about what had happened with the swindler, but as we ate our snacks and drank our juice, I told Sengoku everything she needed to know. It seemed to give her peace of mind. She was relieved. That is, it was probably a real load off her mind. Which made sense, seeing as her involvement with the case had gone one step further, one step deeper than any of the other middle school girls who were affected. Thanks to Ashino, and also thanks very much to Kanburi. She hadn't gotten sucked in any further than that, but I'm sure she hadn't been able to rest easy until just now. Maybe not all from my perspective, it's got kind of a bitter aftertaste. It's gray, or something. It's a hazy, or a middle-of-the-road resolution.
But nothing else bad is going to happen?
Right. In that sense, I guess it can't be beat. Though I wasn't sure if it couldn't be beat, or if we just couldn't beat it. Not sure, in the slightest. This might be a pessimistic attitude, or a straight-up negative one depending on how you look at it, but either way, insofar as things weren't going to get any worse, a resolution was a resolution. No, a resolution is a resolution. Full stop. My little sisters got too big for their britches and got caught with their pants down, but I was never involved in the first place. Why should the peanut gallery have anything to say about it? No one likes a backseat driver. Holding this little victory celebration might have been ridiculous, when you get right down to it, but ignoring that little quibble, just that loathsome swindler leaving our town called for a toast, for me personally. We'd made him promise never to show his face in our town again. So, when you get right down to it, that alone was reason enough to throw one hell of a party.
You said Tsukihi and Karen are mopping up, but hashtag, how do you think it's going?
Hashtag. Were we on Twitter? I'd associated her more with Twister than Twitter.
Oh, sorry, how do you think it's going?
Who knows? I felt bad giving such a lackluster response after making her go to the trouble of correcting herself, but who knows was the only answer I could muster since, unlike my little sisters, I wasn't tapped into the middle school girl network. Thinking about it that way really threw the peculiarity of what that swindler had done, had tried to do, into stark relief. Seriously, it gave me the creeps. Intentionally spreading charms, curses, aberrations.
Do you think Suki's mop-up involves rooting out those aberrations one by one?
No, I think that might be impossible. If I had to guess, I'd say she's probably trying to comfort the victims, something along those lines. Though maybe she's trying to do some of that too. Trying to, maybe, but I think that'd be beyond her. At that point you're completely in the realm of information warfare. That'd be too much to handle, even for the strategist of the Fire Sisters. No, saying even for the strategist of the Fire Sisters begs the question of just how formidable the Fire Sisters are in the first place.
The Fire Sisters are awesome, Big Brother Koyomi. Maybe it's hard to tell because you're family, but they're really, really, really awesome.
Oh yeah?
Really realty awesome.
Realty? Even if you took her words with a grain of salt, or with a whole handful, someone as quiet and modest as Sengoku insisting so firmly made me wonder if it might not be true after all. Maybe the Fire Sisters were awesome.
They are. So awesome that Nadeko gets to be the big man on campus just because we're friends.
Do you really act like the big man? Not a chance. For this tiny little girl to be the big man.
And no.
Sengoku cleared her throat. Even that was cute.
But seriously, no exaggeration, being friends with the Fire Sisters means Nadeko's got enough influence to rake in some money.
Sounds like the wrong kind of influence. That's exactly how swindlers are born. Were my siblings being used to pitch fraudulent investment schemes or something? I've heard it said that too much justice breeds crime, and maybe the Fire Sisters had reached that point. Though I'm sure nothing could be further from their intentions.
Speaking of which,
An imitation group called the Cold Sisters debuted recently.
That's a pretty obvious fake. Well, if you ask me, my sisters are the fakes or no, that'd be going too far. To me, they'll always be the kind of slovenly little sisters who strut around the house naked, but to Sengoku they're old friends, and nothing's gonna change that. I'm sure she's not interested in hearing them slandered, even by a member of their own family.
Doki Doki. Fire Sisters also came out.
That just sounds like a special, to fill the gap between seasons. That, or a whole new show. Huh. So my sisters aired their final episode without my knowing it. Now, whether my sisters can handle it or not, rumors only last for 75 days, as the saying goes. I think the right way to handle the ghost stories that swindlers spread around town is to leave things alone, watch and wait, not do anything rash.
It's all so complex. Do you think there's anything Nadeko can do to help Tsukihei and Karen? Actually, Nadeko was hoping to talk to them about that today.
If there's something you can do, it's to bounce back from that snake case and stand on your own 2 feet, I think. Though I'm not sure things will ever go back to the way they were.
That makes it sound like Nadeko was standing to begin with, but it feels like Nadeko was crawling even before that, slithering along the ground like a snake.
She brooded. Then, with a sudden, awawa, she grabbed a handful of popcorn and crammed it into her mouth, just like she'd said she wanted to earlier, like a squirrel or very much like a snake. Though she didn't swallow it whole, she munched it to bits. Whoa, what the hell? I said, thinking at the same time how cute everything she did was.
Let's see, Big Brother Koyomi. In Nadeko's case it's clear, but how did Mr. Swindler?
It was charmingly typical of her to say Mr. Swindler, but as someone who'd actually met and spoken with Mr. Swindler, it rubbed me the wrong way, somewhat. I'd have told anyone but Sengoku never to call that bastard Mr. again.
How did he spread those rumors?
Hun?
Those rumors, or charms, or ghost stories, that occult stuff, how...
Oh, well, it was like a get-rich-quick scheme. He spread free trial charms around the middle school girl community, then waited in the wings to sell them charms that actually cost money. Come to think of it, it was such a current sales philosophy. Give out the basic version for free, then sell the optional add-ons. He was right on trend, just as you'd expect from a man who devoted his life to the career of a con man. Nah, being a con man wasn't a career, it was a crime.
No, Big Brother Koyomi. Nadeko is asking how, not how come.
You want to know more about his methods, not his goal. His methods... Launch into a big lecture on the subject as her dependable big brother if that was what she wanted. When I actually tried, though, nothing came out. Oops. Methods? He spread rumors targeted at middle school girls, vaguely speaking. But yeah, seriously, how do you go about doing that? As an expert, Oshino made his living collecting tales of aberrations, urban legends, the word on the street, second-hand gossip. That's what he came to this town to gather. And then he left. Whether that actually constitutes a profession is another question entirely, and we'll leave it aside once again, but in some sense it's straightforward. What he does is put out his net and catch whatever rumors are floating around, whatever stories are circulating. He's in the position of observer, poacher, recorder, you might say. In other words, he's on the listening end of things, so it might not be easy, but it's still the kind of thing anyone could do, at least to some extent. You can go out and hear the stories for yourself, you can opt to go more contemporary and search for them on the internet. There are plenty of methods available. But what about the opposite? Urban legends, the word on the street, secondhand gossip. What about spreading them rather than collecting them? As the teller, not the listener, what would your methods actually be? As transmitter rather than receiver. And if you're not just transmitting but also controlling the subsequent course of the transmission, we're getting into seriously difficult territory. Setting a trap instead of a net, how would you go about it? Sengoku, you tried to deal with it yourself, didn't you? The rumor, the ghost story that the swindler put about. A snake aberration.
Yeah, but it didn't go so well.
Doesn't matter if you succeeded or not, you tried to use something you found in a book, right? Rather than buy anything from him. I'm pretty sure that was the case. No doubt about it, really, since I'd seen Sengoku from behind at the bookstore, doing research. Everything about that swindler's grand plan was abominable, but nevertheless, if there was one saving grace. If I had to find one saving grace, it'd be the fact that she'd avoided direct contact with him. If that bad omen personified, if he even was a person, had laid eyes on Nadeko Sengoku, who looked even more helpless than a chihuahua, she would never have come out of it unscathed. Even Karen had such a terrible time of it. If it were Sengoku,
Yeah, come to think of it, Nadeko probably could have gotten in touch with Mr. Swindler with a little effort. If only we'd met up. She said bravely. Nadeko could have tied him up and handed him over to the police.
no chance. I let a typical retort slip out. That aside, it wasn't as if finding out now helped in any way. And Sengoku probably wasn't asking me for any pressing reason, but I'd be lying if I said my curiosity wasn't piqued. That Swindler. How had he spread those rumors? Who did everyone hear them from in the first place? It wasn't from the Swindler himself?
As far as Nadeko knows, how people answered when Tsukii asked around was a whisper on the wind.
The wind? Urban legends are a kind of folklore, the kind of thing that happened to a friend. But if you actually try to find that friend of a friend, you'll come up empty. On the subject of the Swindler himself, I had nothing more to tell Sengoku. That is, nothing more that I was able to tell her, so I decided to pass the time with a discussion of this new topic until Tsukii and Karen got home. Calling it a discussion might be a bit of an exaggeration. Since it was just for fun, I had no illusions that it would prove useful down the line. But leaving aside the rumors disseminated by that Swindler for a moment, I was pretty sure I remembered something similar from back during spring break. It was already months ago at the time I wasn't studying for exams yet, nor had I had any dealings with aberrations. But the very first time I talked with Hanekawa, before we were even in the same class, she told me a rumor that was going around about a vampire, a blonde vampire, an iron-blooded, hot-blooded, yet cold-blooded vampire. Overpoweringly beautiful, and as I recall, that rumor of the vampire were alike in that regard. It didn't necessarily mean they had some common denominator though. Maybe girls, that is, females, just like to gossip more than males do. I've heard that it's women who create the trends at any given moment, so isn't it possible that folklore too comes out of such a community? It would explain why that Swindler chose to target girls. Though maybe this kind of talk is a type of rumor as well, since there are girls like you, Sengoku, who are outside the rumor mill, and I heard about the vampire, even though I'm a boy.
Totally. So instead of a narrow focus, Big Brother Koyomi, we should question the question of how rumors spread more generally, more broadly.
Yeah, you're right. The question sounded pretty odd, but Sengoku seemed to be as linguistically hopeless as myself, so I let it go. This was no time to be pedantic about semantics. The process by which rumors spread, or should I say the process by which rumors are spread, how did that Swindler make it happen? The propagation of urban legends, the spread of second-hand gossip. The thing is, if he could wrap his head around something like that, I feel like he wouldn't have to stoop to something with as poor a cost-performance index as swindling.
Not everyone is motivated by cost performance, though, are they, Big Brother Koyomi? Nadeko never actually met him, so it's hard to say. But from everything you've said, it seems like he's the kind of person who just enjoys deceiving people.
Well, you're right about that. But I don't think it's even a question of whether or not he enjoys it. It seems more pathological or like it's his karma or something. So, maybe swindling wasn't a career he chose of his own free will, maybe it was the only path open to him. Which means that he's a victim too, is something I would never think, though not ever. He's a perpetrator any way you slice it. I mean, come on. Maybe we need to think of making trends and making a profit from trends as two separate things, I suggested. That Swindler said himself that this time around he'd failed. Is it basically a question of getting out while the market is still good? Duping people with baseless rumors and turning a profit off it are two different things. Yeah, if we were going to have this discussion, that's the first thing we needed to recognize. After all, we're not trying to deduce the method for starting a trend, and to unravel the mystery of a swindler's methods, in order to get rich quick.
What? Sengoku looked startled, then tried to salvage the situation by saying, "Oh, right. Of course not."
She'd been hoping to get rich quick. Well, that in and of itself wasn't something to reprimand her for. As long as it's obtained by legitimate means, there's nothing to criticize about making money, or making money your goal, though, as a high school senior who'd shouldered a 5 million yen debt. I didn't know about getting too engrossed in it.
But, Big Brother Koyomi, if someone did figure out how to intentionally create rumors or trends, if they had that kind of artificial know-how, that'd be pretty awesome. It'd be the discovery of the century. They could create a social phenomenon.
Well, personally, I have no desire to create a social phenomenon. Although we're trying to think this through, it's not even clear that you really could artificially generate ghost stories or urban legends or trends.
But Nadeko's heard about that happening. Like, they decide next year's popular fashions at meetings a whole year earlier.
Yeah, I've heard that too. But I've also heard that the fashions they come up with at those meetings don't necessarily take off. That seems like precisely the kind of thing Ashino could elucidate for us clearly and succinctly. There really are organizations that are trying to create trends, even if they aren't swindlers. But that's neither here nor there. First, matey, we should try and define the object of our discussion. A fad, in other words. Right. Even if this was just for fun, I'd be lying if I said I didn't harbor a faint hope that it might come in handy if someone like that swindler showed up to menace our town again. If you know your enemy, and know yourself as Sun Tzu said, either way, the difference between baseless rumors and urban legends kind of escapes me. You can't distinguish between them on the basis of which are true and which are false, for instance, because they're all false. Reality is inherently a mixture of truth and fiction.
A definition, huh? Does hearing it from a friend of a friend count as one, since we're talking about a whisper on the wind?
But a friend of a friend is hard to define. And something you hear from a friend of a friend is actually just something you hear from your friend, in which case it's a game of telephone. And so our conference began in earnest. It wasn't a meeting to decide next year's fashions. Nothing nearly so serious, but I still cleared away the snacks and set up the table because I thought it might create a certain atmosphere. I opened a notebook and took out a pennant. It felt like we were about to start a study session. Though any conference that Sengoku and I were holding would be over in a heartbeat if Hanekawa were present. I guess maybe the first definition should be something you end up knowing without knowing it. In other words, something that you learn even though you make no active effort to obtain the information.
Totally. The charms that went around school were like that too. Everyone was doing them before you knew it, almost like it was contagious.
Contagious?
But that makes it sound like the flu or something.
Actually, influenza originally meant something like outbreak, didn't it? So given that these things spread like a pandemic, it makes sense to think of them the same way. In which case, can we define a rumor as something infectious? You can hazard a guess, but it's difficult to pin down exactly who you were infected by. And by the time you realize what's going on, you've already got the symptoms. A whisper on the wind, well put, though it might be more of a tickle in the throat. If that's the case, then what that swindler did to this town was almost like a kind of bioterrorism. I remember hearing something at some point about the 3 principles of infectious diseases. I tried to recall them. Of course, the person I'd heard this from was Hanekawa. Almost all of my knowledge comes from her or Senjogahara.
Oh wow, what are they? These 3 pillars?
No, I think the 3 pillars are friendship, effort, and victory, but, the 3 principles of infectious diseases, or the 3 principles of pandemics: 1 rapid rate of infection, 2 wide scope of infection, 3 resistant to countermeasures. I'm pretty sure that was it. Seems like you could apply these 3 principles to rumors just as easily.
Kind of like weapon speed, range, and power.
That's right, I forgot she was a gamer.
Nadeko more or less understands speed and range, but what does resistant to countermeasures mean? Big Brother Koyomi.
Well, just what it sounds like. Once the infection starts, once it starts to spread, it can't be stopped. Or, really I should say, it can't be stopped easily.
But rumors only last for 75 days, right?
Yeah, but that also means you've got to resign yourself to them until 75 days have passed. Even the Fire Sisters had found themselves playing catch-up, and they still weren't caught up in the end. The only real way to stop an outbreak or an epidemic is prevention, to stop it before it starts.
I see.
In her own way, she was doing everything she could to contribute to the proper atmosphere of a meeting. Adorable, but it wasn't working. I couldn't rid myself of the sense that she was playing make-believe. Maybe the same was true for me. Well, that goes for a naturally occurring rumor as much as it does for an artificial one, like the ones the swindler created. I have a hard time believing that his plan included getting the charms he'd unleashed back under control again. Even if things had turned out well for him, he'd probably meant to go as big as he could, and then skip town without worrying about what happened afterwards. A real scorched earth policy.
With Mr. Swindler, the speed of infection was amazing. Those charms worked their magic in just a few months.
The scope, too. An entire town. And the frightening part is that it was all done by just one person. It's not praiseworthy, and I have no desire to praise him, but damn, that swindler is really something. So taking those principles as the basic requirements, let's think of a method that fulfills all 3. Come on, there's nothing he can do that we can't. Okay, I guess there are. But it didn't cost me anything to say it. Then again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Sengoku, if it were you, for instance, what would you do? Say, if you were going to try and popularize something like an aberration tale, if you were going to do it intentionally. If you were going to do it intentionally.
It's kind of hard for Nadeko to see what creating a fad actually requires. After considering it, she continued, but it seems like the easiest and quickest thing would be to make something that's already popular even more popular.
Damn. Kind of hard for her to see what it actually required? She'd just come up with a surprisingly actual methodology, hitting the nail on the head. In fact, if there's already some sort of foundation, something to build on, then the trail is already blazed for you. Maybe like how, neurologically speaking, once a synaptic connection has been made, it becomes easier for subsequent electrical impulses to travel the same route. We probably could have done without the neuroscience analogy, but I was showing off for Sengoku. I wanted to try and sound intellectual. Whether or not I succeeded is another question. There are plenty of variations, like repopularizing something that used to be popular. With ghost stories, for instance, they say the same tropes come back again in 10 or 100-year cycles. You're totally right. That would be the easiest and quickest way to do it.
You think?
Embarrassed Sengoku. Embarrassed Sengoku. Disgustingly cute. But while you might be able to create a trend that way, you wouldn't be able to create the trend you want, which is fine if your only goal is to create some trend.
Sorry.
It's nothing to apologize for. This girl apologizes compulsively. She hadn't apologized yet today, and I figured she might make it to the end. But no dice. I hate constantly using that unpleasant swindler as an example, but if he wanted to popularize tales of aberrations as efficiently as possible, it would have made sense to disseminate the vampire story. It had already infected the girls once, so the foundation was laid. If he didn't, it was because he didn't see the benefit. Vampires aren't a moneymaker. He must have judged. I wonder if the vampire rumors made the rounds over spring break, that is, made the rounds so easily. Because vampires are already such a familiar concept.
Totally. Every single person in Japan knows about them. TV, manga, movies, and video games too. Vampires are always being shoved down our throats. Maybe instead of something that used to be popular, they're just part of the culture now.
Part of the culture. Well, it's the way of the world that the things we take for granted suddenly go out of fashion, but the object of our current discussion was the rise of trends, not their decline. It's definitely easier for well-known things, that is, things with a certain brand recognition, to become a fad. But something that already has that foundation might deviate from our definition of going viral, since it wouldn't need that explosive infectiousness. Let's forget about making something famous even more famous. What about the know-how to make something unknown famous for the first time?
In that case, there's TV, and what do you call it?
Mass media? Introducing something to the public through TV, newspapers, magazines, that's definitely a common way of spreading these infections.
That's it. Mass media, publicity, or advertising.
Advertising, yeah. But even if it's not an ad, whenever the media introduces anything, fiction or non-fiction, there's some awareness of trying to spread or popularize it. There must be. It wouldn't make any sense to present something to the public at large with no intention of popularizing it. People who succeed often say, I never expected everyone to be so into it, but they're either being humble or humble bragging.
Still, isn't that kind of related to what we were saying before? Something that's advertised on TV or in the newspaper is probably already famous to some degree, isn't it?
You may be right. If the media's role is to facilitate the transition from people in the know knowing about it to everyone knowing about it, then there has to be a prior stage. It's a different story if you've got the media in your pocket, of course, but I refuse to believe that Swindler's got such substantial political pull. He's like Ashino, not the type to throw in with any kind of organization. If we think of the mass media as a certain kind of authority, then relying on an authority is one way of disseminating a trend. In school terms, that intermediary would be the teachers, or the class president.
Totally. If Nadeko wanted to spread some kind of rumor, considering what is it, cost performance, Nadeko would probably go through Tsukihii. She's a big name with all the middle school girls. She's the boss, so if you spread a rumor to her, that might be even more effective than telling the story to 100 other people. Assuming Tsukihii actually spreads it around for you, she's got tight lips.
She sure does. She didn't even crack under torture.
Torture?
Oh, nothing. I waved it off. Anyway, Tsukihi's tight-lippedness was well documented. If we're comparing rumors to viruses, she's got one hell of an immune system. Not only did she not fall victim to that swindler, she tried to dry them out. Even if a rumor is resistant to countermeasures, you can always cut off the source of infection. I guess if you want to popularize something with the general public, you can turn a personality into a billboard.
By personality, you mean celebrity, right? Yeah, the forefront of any trend. But does that mean intentionally creating a trend is always going to involve jumping on some kind of bandwagon?
Sengoku sounded kind of disappointed. She wasn't displaying it openly, but it definitely seemed like she was losing interest. Well, it indeed was a terribly boring conclusion. Maybe not for a jaded high schooler like me, but certainly for a naive middle schooler like Sengoku. What sells sells because it sells. That may be the watchword of the business world, but it sure as hell wasn't interesting. It isn't necessarily true that good things become popular. Bad money drives out good, but if that's the reality, let's hear it for the ideal and effitriety. I don't think that Swindler uses the kind of methods we're talking about though. I'm sure he understands them, of course. Still, I can't imagine him having direct contact with important people. In fact, they must be exactly the ones to whom he contrives for things to be transmitted from a friend of a friend. If I were in his position, not a hypothetical I wanted to consider, but I'd just have to grin and bear it. I don't think I'd want to get anywhere near someone like that. Tsukihi's name just came up as an example, but in the end he made contact with Karen, and avoided Tsuki completely.
Is that because important people are also dangerous?
How can I put this? It feels like a contradiction, but the ideal virus popularizes itself on its own, without any fancy footwork on your part, no need for any advertising or publicity or marketing.
Yeah, but isn't hoping for a virus to popularize itself like standing around waiting for lightning to strike? That's not artificial. It's just a natural occurrence. At that point, aren't you just counting on chance?
In which case, maybe that swindler's methodology was of the throw some mud at the wall and see what sticks variety. Simultaneously start circulating a whole bunch of aberration tales or charms that you want to popularize, that you want to disseminate, and statistically speaking, one of them will catch on. Maybe he left it up to chance. The invisible hand of God. But I wonder if that guy would rely on chance for laying the groundwork for the preliminary arrangements for a swindle. Well, okay, maybe we should wrap up that part of the discussion for today. Our conclusion for now is thorough dissemination and throwing mud at the wall to see what sticks. Okay, next let's turn to the content of those trends. Leaving aside what someone might want to popularize, what would be easy to popularize? Easy to popularize. Highly contagious, easy to spread. When you want to popularize something, whether it's a rumor or a ghost story or a product, it's important to package it in a form that makes your job easier. With ghost stories, for instance, scary ones spread more readily, right?
But they won't catch on if they're too scarious. You have to adjust the scariness to the right level so they're not too intense and people want to tell them.
So, you needed to draw a line like the one between horror films and splatter films? They can't be too extreme, or excessive, in other words. In every period there are things that come into fashion, and things that go out of fashion, and while unexpected things do become popular sometimes, I bet if you investigated those unpredictable trends, you'd find that they have a surprising amount of overlap.
Like the 3 principles of pandemics?
This time, I think it really is more like the 3 pillars, with the caveat that there will always be exceptions to the rule. This was something that Senjo Gahara, not Hanekawa, had told me. The phrasing was somewhat different, but I relayed the gist of it. Easy to comprehend, easy to obtain, easy to share, I guess.
Comprehend, obtain, share?
Easy to comprehend, well, I think that one's easy to understand even without an explanation. Something that involves a complicated, confusing procedure won't spread readily. I think we can safely say that approaching something with the idea that it's fine, if only the people who get it, isn't going to make anything go viral. Conversely, if you want to popularize something complicated or a complicated configuration, you have to come up with a way to get that across to make it clear. Alternately, it becomes essential that people be able to use it as is without understanding its underlying complexity. TVs, cell phones, and computers, for instance, most people use them constantly without ever understanding how they work.
What about easy to obtain?
In a word, I guess that means affordable. Though it's not only a question of price. For example, a diamond is a rare gemstone, so regardless of how cheap it becomes, it won't be easy to obtain. And the last one, easy to share, means that it's easy for everyone to enjoy together. However great something is, if anyone ends up monopolizing it, it won't spread any further. Something that's set up to reward you for sharing your work or your impressions with other people will become a trend. In that regard, the charms the swindler spread around were totally on point. I already touched on his first one's free MO, but that must have been why he honed in on charms that hinged on human relationships. A trend calculated to debase human relationships. Another example of bad money driving out good. Because a fad means people are getting crazy even if it's understood as staying one step ahead. Still, I conceded. If we're bound by these basic principles, we're diverging once again from our original objective of popularizing something in particular.
I see. Something besides the thing you were trying to popularize might take off, but it's just impossible to control which way the wind blows. All you can do is trust in heaven.
Whichever way the wind blows, is that how it is? Asked Sengoku. Was that it? No, I don't buy it. That swindler Deishu Keiki, leaving the swindles by which he makes his living up to divine providence, just didn't jibe with my understanding of how he went about things. No way he was going to clasp the invisible hand of God, or even the hand of the devil. The epilogue, or maybe the punchline of this story. In the end, we never decided what kind of methods that swindler had used to popularize his charms within the middle school girl community, and in that sense, our meeting ended fruitlessly. I suppose it was still a little early for Sengoku to take on a subject like the state of trends in modern society. While we were still chatting, Karen and Suki came home, and the meeting came to a close. Then the four of us hung out for the first time in ages. Actually, Karen, who was a year ahead, hadn't really hung out with Sengoku back in elementary school, so it might have been the first time that particular quartet had been assembled. Sengoku's shyness skill was operating at maximum capacity, though it was cancelled out by Karen's amiable to a fault interpersonal skills. But anyway, it wasn't until a little later that I found out the truth about that swindler's method specifically. It was the middle of August 14th. And how did it happen? I met with the man himself, met with him, the way someone meets with an accident. Having promised never to return to our town a second time, he'd returned for his first time. Gimme a break and fuck off already. The main topic on that occasion was a couple of his fellow experts, but in the course of the conversation, I asked him about it.
He said. The ability to know which way the wind is blowing. The ability to control the wind, nope. That's beyond me. Granted, that might also be a lie.
Can't trust this guy even an inch. Maybe it was stupid to even ask. I was thinking, but then he went on.
If you ask me, though, something like the ability to know which way the wind is blowing isn't particularly important, because the most conducive environment for a pandemic is a state of calm.
Calm?
That's the vital thing for causing a pandemic, in my opinion, Araragi.
By calm, you mean like the absence of wind?
While one thing is popular, another thing can't be strictly speaking. I suppose you could say that even if something else tried to break through, it wouldn't be able to. So if I wanted to popularize something specific, I'd be sure to choose the right time and place, even if I couldn't choose the target. Rumors last for 75 days. Then for those 75 days, you have to give up on creating a trend. Take this town. I wouldn't have been able to do anything over spring break because rumors of a vampire had captured everyone's imagination. No sense in trying to take on an overwhelming number. One, smash. And when I say overwhelming, I mean the virus would have overwhelmed any other virus. So once that rumor had run its course, I injected my own into the empty space, the hungry space it had left behind.
It seemed so obvious once he said it. In other words, a pandemic will break out where there's a vacuum, or is more likely to do so, anyway.
Ghost stories and the word on the street, urban legends and baseless rumors, they all run rampant when people are emotionally distraught, which is the same as saying when people have nothing anchoring their lives. A trendless time, in other words. Now, Araj, what kind of person do you think a swindler targets? Who's the mark? Think about it.
Think about it? That's not something I want to think about.
Humor me.
Nothing funny about that question. Anyway, rich people, I guess? Don't you go after the wealthy?
Just what an upstanding person would think. But satisfied people are surprisingly hard to deceive. People who have financial leeway also have emotional leeway. So swindlers target those who are unsatisfied with their lot, who don't have that room to breathe.
Which is why you set your sights on middle school girls the last time you were here, or, going further back, on Senjo Gahara's family, while they were agonizing over their daughter's illness.
That's right. A mind filled with anxiety is a mind ripe for deception. Because that person doesn't have the leeway to worry about whether you're lying to them or not, pontificated the swindler, without any hint of remorse. You are saying that in preparation for my konai popularized charms that would debase human relationships, but in fact it was just the opposite. Their relationships were already debased, so they jumped all over my charms.
A state of calm is not necessarily a state of asepsis. In fact, a virus with the potential to cause an explosive pandemic is always lying dormant, just below the surface, said the swindler. Are you saying it was their own fault they got duped?
When you put it like that, it makes me not want to put it like that. How about we just blame it on the zeitgeist? If you want to understand the kind of chaotic situation that makes you wonder, why is this even popular? Or how did that get so popular? It's really the vacuum that precedes the chaos you should be thinking about.
The vacuum?
The darkness, you might say. So let me give you a piece of advice. If something inexplicable becomes trendy, keep an eye on the zeitgeist. Keep an eye on the very ground beneath your feet. Assume that something is fucked. Assume that the situation is critical. Whether it's a human scheme or a natural occurrence, it's happening because you live in an age enveloped by darkness.
Enveloped by darkness.
The circumstances that make it easy for a fad to break out are pretty much the same as those that make it easy for a riot to break out. When there's no stable footing, you end up getting swept up by the tide. But there's no easier time to be a guy like me, Kaiki observed ominously before continuing. Now, Araragi, having taught you such an important trade secret, I must demand an additional fee from you.
I'd already paid this guy for information about a certain two-man cell of experts, but because I'd foolishly asked a question, some kind of option had kicked in.
I know you've got your emergency fund in the inside pocket of your jacket.
He'd seen right through me. The wind isn't blowing my way today. There's no question that the path Karen Araragi treads, the path of karate, is a steep and severe one. But for a slacker like myself, the very idea of having such a clear path laid out before me is enviable. If it were anyone but my little sister, I would be eyeing her jealously. Since it's my little sister, however, I'd just avert my eyes awkwardly. Nevertheless, I'd be lying if I said I never tried to imagine just what it would feel like, what it would be like, to walk unfalteringly down a ramrod, straight one-way street, a highway even, laid out before me with no twists or turns, no need for a map. To know I was striding down the right road, both feet firmly on the ground, proceeding step by steady step every day. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and on a journey of 100 miles, 90 miles is only halfway. In a world where darkness is always one step ahead of you, it's an untold blessing just to be able to see the path you travel down, even if it's a path without an end. Darkness. The darkness. For her there's no such thing. I said I'd be jealous if it were anyone but my little sister, but by the same token, if it weren't my little sister, I might fall in love with that level of humanity. And yet, the kind of life she lives always comes with a disclaimer. Precisely because her path is so clearly laid out before her, think how shocking it would be to lose sight of it. I can't help envisioning that horrible eventuality as well. I've asked her, if you were in a situation where you had to give up karate, what would you do? A situation where she had to give it up. A situation where she had to give up. Where she had to leave that path, that highway down which she walks. I really wasn't scheming to upset my sister by bringing up this statistically improbable exceptional eventuality. I'm not such a mean person. I was only trying to show my concern for her by mulling over my misgivings about a real possibility. And it is a very real possibility. When you train morning, noon, and night in a combat sport like karate, there's always the possibility of sustaining a grievous career-ending injury, or the love of your life might implore you to give up such a dangerous activity. Maybe you end up in a position where you have to focus all your attention on your studies. However clear the road before you, however well maintained and spectacular, there's always the chance of mechanical trouble. With the engine or the electrical system, there's potential trouble everywhere. However bright the path, however dazzlingly the sun shines down upon it, that doesn't necessarily mean the future is bright. The darkness isn't only ahead, it can also be inside. If you stalled out on your path, what would you do? You find yourself in a pickle sooner or later. But Karen's unruffled, confident response was simply,
You're wrong, big brother, because wherever I drop is the finish line. Getting to the point where I can't go any further is the goal.
to walk until you drop, without ever stalling out. In other words, she expressed a fierce determination to forge ahead until she fell.
This is the tree, big brother, said Karen, pointing to a tree behind the dojo where she had led me.
Hanekawa probably could have identified the variety at a single glance, but unfortunately I'm ill-versed in both horticulture and forestry, so tree is the best I can do. Whether ill-versed is a generally accepted opposite for the idiomatic term well-versed is a whole other question. The only other thing I can say about it is that it was old and almost totally leafless. This tree, was my initial response to Karen's words. I didn't know how else to react. Well, it's definitely a tree. It's slenderer than I expected. From what you told me, I was envisioning something a little sturdier.
I didn't say anything like that.
But this is the tree that's in your way?
I didn't say anything like that either. That's horrible. It's all them others who are treating this tree like it's in the way I'm its ally.
Uh-huh. All them others struck me as an unexpectedly pungent phrase. I also found myself wondering if trees really have allies and enemies. But that aside, it seemed clear that Karen, my bigger little sister, had a tremendous amount of empathy for this tree. Empathy. My richly sentimental little sisters, in particular this older one, had a tendency to pour their excess emotions into literally anything, so if you didn't watch what you said, they could end up casually throwing their support behind anything or anyone. Which is precisely why, as one wing, and question_mark, of the Fire Sisters, this kid reigned over the middle schoolers by popular writ, but one false move and that personality could also prove terribly precarious. So I never take anything she says at face value. I always have to listen with a cool head. As I pondered this, I reappraised the tree that stood there before me. Late September, I had come along with my little sister Karen Araragi to the town dojo where she trains, a privately owned dojo where they teach karate. A dojo run by a master of practical combat karate, where for many years already Karen had been devoting herself to her training. The melee skills she cultivated there had been demonstrated to her older brother on many occasions, and in that sense I couldn't set foot in that place without a certain bitterness. But under the circumstances I had no choice. That is, setting aside my bitterness for a moment, I was definitely interested in darkening the dojo's door at least once, because I had a hankering to meet the person whom Karen, the same Karen who turned up her nose at any kind of etiquette or manners, called sensei, to find out just what kind of a person this sensei might be. Half because I wanted to say thanks for taking such good care of Karen, and half because I wanted to complain, what the hell kind of skills are you teaching my little sister? So after an hour and a half, my heart pounding, I reached the dojo that Karen could dash to in just under an hour. But unfortunately the sensei wasn't in. This isn't what I was promised.
What? I never said anything about introducing you to my sensei, or did I? When? What second of what minute of what hour of what day of what month? How many revolutions of the earth are we talking about?
Shut up. If she weren't my little sister, I'd smack her one. No, it's because she was my little sister that I wanted to smack her for being so immature. Karen, the only reason I don't smack you right now is that you're stronger than me.
How can my own big brother say something so pathetic?
She looked sad. I hate that even more than when she looks disgusted.
Well, I've wanted to introduce the big brother I'm so proud of to my sensei for a long time too. I thought today would be a perfect opportunity since there are no classes at the dojo, but nobody's home.
I mean, it's pretty normal for people to go out on their days off. Wait, did you even make an appointment?
Me and my sensei are on the same wavelength. We don't need appointments or a polis or anything.
First of all, I don't think too many relationships require spaceships, and second of all, judging from how things have turned out, we very much did need an appointment.
Yeah, that's all over my head.
Despite the fact that I'd taken the time to lay it all out clearly, and in numerical order no less, Karen just laughed it off and lightly vaulted over the gate. When I say gate though, I'm not talking about your garden variety garden gate. The dojo had a gate like the kind in front of a certain kind of house. Impressive, or imposing, or really huge, but Karen took off like a ninja and leapt clean over it. Damn, she doesn't even need CG. It made me want to market her as the antithesis of today's movie industry. While I was thinking this over, she opened the gate from the inside.
Okay, big brother, come on in, this way.
What are you, a ninja? A phantom thief? You can't just go in there when nobody's home. I never thought I'd have to explain such a basic concept to a defender of justice, like my little sister, but Karen didn't seem fazed. In fact, she seemed proud.
Don't underestimate the trust between me and my sensei, big brother. I always come and go as I please like this, and it's never been an issue.
That's unheard of. You're just a disciple. That's it. Next time I'm coming to the dojo with our parents instead. To formally apologize.
Oh, come on! It's not like I'm going into the house, just the dojo, and really just the backyard.
That's all very well, but
Don't be such a stick in the mud. You've got to be more flexible. I can help you with that if you want. We can do our daily stretches together from now on.
if I did the kind of stretches you do, I'd break every bone in my body. It'd be more like splatter than stretch.
Tra-la-la.
She practically skipped towards the dojo. I followed after her, thinking how much I envied her seemingly carefree life, and she introduced me to the tree in question. But even if it's slenderer than I expected, a tree's a tree, it's got such presence, I said. Looking up again at the problematic tree, though of course Karen said there was no problem at all, I asked, "Are you sure that up until now, no one noticed this tree was here?" Allow me to rewind the story a little further. There I was in my bedroom, studying for exams. It was the end of September, the final stretch. And I must say that my feverish zeal was a fearsome thing indeed. I was so intensely devoted to the pursuit of knowledge that no one could even get near me, but Karen just waltzed up and plunked her breasts down on top of my head.
Hey, Big Brother, it's your beloved boobies, Big Brother.
The big brother comes off looking bad and the little sister comes off looking stupid. It wasn't like this back in April or May. How did it come to this? When did we start coming off like this? I'd always endeavored to be an exemplary brother to my little sisters. What is it? What do you need, Karen?
A fine question, but not the pertinent one.
What an irritating attitude. She's as flighty as a feather.
The correct question would be, when should we go?
You make it sound like I've agreed to go somewhere with you. To begin with, it'd be so wrong if we could communicate like that, like we were psychics. Now get your enormous boobs off my head and answer my question already. What do you need?
Let's see, what do I need? The truth is, I think you already know what I need, Big Brother.
Okay, don't tell me what you need. Just remove your enormous boobs, that's plenty. The boobs, if you please.
Fine, I'll back off this time.
She backed off. Well, I say enormous, but they weren't Hanekawa caliber, and if you factored in height relative to size, the comparison wasn't even worth making.
Okay, now that you've had your fill of touching your little sister's boobies, Big Brother, will you listen to what I have to say? Since I laid my boobies by your ear, won't you lend it to me in return?
I don't know what Tsukihi's been telling you, but this time I'm utterly not to blame, okay? You unilaterally laid those balloons on me, okay?
Unilaterally? I'm shocked to hear you say that. Just as some people's hearts accept God's grace, your head accepted Karen's boobies.
I've had enough of your made-up sayings. Apparently I was going to have to call a halt to my exam prep. What can you do? I don't know what she wanted my ear for, but it looked like I had no choice but to lend it. I mean, since the incident with the swindler back in July, she'd stopped bottling things up, let alone going on the rampage, and learned how to ask her older brother for advice like a proper little sister. That was an improvement, right? So, let's hear it.
You want to hear it? Guess I've got no choice then.
Not the kind of attitude you'd expect from someone who is asking for advice, but since she could beat me up, I decided to overlook that.
The fact is, I need your help. Save me, Big Brother.
Not quite what I was expecting from someone who was acting so big, but she was so physically large that even if she acted small, it wouldn't make much of a difference. Save you? Hehe, would you look at that? Listen, Karen, people can't save other people. People just go and get saved on their own.
Quit talking that nonsense or I'll pound you.
She brushed me off. That is, I had a brush with death. Well, not like it wasn't my own fault for espousing a philosophy that wasn't even mine, but why's my little sister have to crack down on me like that?
I'm telling you to cut the shit and give me some advice, dumbass. You cruising for a bruising?
This was more than a crackdown. She was going to stamp me out. I was about to be shut up. Permanently. Understood, I'll give it. I'll give it, so hurry up and talk. Chop chop.
Whoopee score! Thanks, Big Brother. That makes me so happy. I'll give you a peek at my boobies while we talk to say thank you. Peek, peek.
Looks like we've got a feral little sister in the house. With a sister like her, I'll probably fail my exams no matter how hard I study. They say it's always those closest to you who trip you up in the end.
Hey, Big Brother! You can stroke these legs while you listen. Aren't they shapely?
Sure, if toothpick is a shape, and there will be no stroking. Now if you don't want to turn me into the silent type, hurry up and tell me what it is you want my advice about.
It's a tree.
A total non sequitur. That is, she didn't telegraph the topic at all. Which I'm sure is a fearsome skill to wield in combat, but in conversation it just makes you a bad conversationalist. It made me keenly aware of the difference between the art of war and the art of conversation. But if I didn't get the conversation back on track, I could end up with a different kind of keen sensation, so I nodded soberly. Ah, a tree, you say? I see. I see. I was appeasing my little sister. I'm the kind of guy who can make the tough decisions, like not hesitating to be obsequious towards my little sister in the service of my goal, however I dress it up though. In this case my goal was I don't want my little sister to hit me. The A of Araragi also stands for appease. But of course, makes perfect sense. Who else would you talk to about a tree but me?
Thunderbolt punch!
I got hit anyway. She may be an idiot, but I guess she still picked up on the fact that I was making an idiot out of her.
The thunderbolt punch, a strike employing the power of static electricity.
That clearly employed the power of your muscles.
A tree was discovered at the dojo, and everyone's treating it like it's in the way. So I want to save it, but I don't have the power to. So please, big brother, do something. I know you'll be able to do something. I believe in you. Now show me that you can live up to my expectations. Show me.
As I recall, speak like water running down a board was an idiom originally used for describing the fluid speech of silent film narrators, but the way Karen embodied it felt more like a cold shower. Transmet failure. I'm not getting any of this.
Come on, don't you get it? Man, you're slow on the uptake, big brother. If you can't get motivated without seeing some titties, just say so already.
What do you take your own brother for, the turtle hermit?
Ahaha. If only my big brother was Master Roshi. That would be amazing. Though I guess Master Roshi minus his strength would be kind of like you.
If you took away the turtle hermit's strength, what would that leave?
A turtle?
I'll take the hermit. Still, a big brother who can't understand what his little sister's talking about would be pitiful, so I decided to make an effort to make sense of her story. A tree was discovered at the dojo. You mean like some timber? To use for breaking?
No! What a horrible thing to say. Want me to rearrange your face for you?
Who's being horrible here? As if I'd let you rearrange it.
Let's see. So there's the dojo, right? Like so.
Karen started explaining with motions and gesticulations. But it's hard to imagine how gesticulations could help in explaining the existence of a dojo, and indeed I didn't understand her explanation at all. Fine, forget the details, for now let's focus on the big picture. I don't know about the like so part, but basically there's a dojo, and that dojo is the practical combat dojo you attend. With you so far.
The dojo's been around for 50 years. It's a big, beautiful /antediluvian/dojo.
Seemed like antediluvian wasn't spelled out just now. You don't know how, do you? Well, whatever. So, what's wrong with the dojo?
Nothing's wrong with the dojo.
I'm sorry? What the heck? I was quickly starting to suspect that asking my advice was merely a pretext for disrupting my exam prep.
It's round back of the dojo.
Round back?
Round back, not a roundhouse.
I wasn't confused. I don't exactly have roundhouses on my mind all the time.
Back in the day, I used to think the roundhouse must be an awesome school of martial arts or something. A warrior clan like the Tairas or Minamotos. I was so disappointed to find out it was just a single move. But watch out, big brother, watch out. Don't derail the conversation. We're talking round back here, not a roundhouse.
You're the only one who's mixed up. She's the worst explainer. I started to wish she would draw me a picture instead.
By back, I mean backyard. There's a courtyard behind the dojo, and that's where the tree was discovered.
Yeah, but this discovered part is the part I really don't get. Are you basically saying some lumber was lying on the ground in the courtyard behind the dojo?
You don't understand a thing, do you, big brother? That's not what I'm saying at all. All you ever think about is boobies, so that's how you start to see the world. That's how you see your own little sister.
No, I don't. And never mind what goes on in there the rest of the time. Right now, I'm just worried about you.
Yeah, thanks for worrying about me, big brother.
She turned cute all of a sudden. She only hears the good parts.
It's not lumber. It's not for breaking. It's a living tree. Roots in the ground and everything.
Hun?
No good? You still don't get it?
No. I think I get it, but by getting it, I no longer got it. Or it got harder to get. I'd gotten a vague impression she was telling me that one day some mysterious lumber had been on the ground in the backyard of the dojo had been put there, or brought there, but a living tree. With roots in the ground? Let me get this straight, Karen.
Ha! No need.
Indulge me. So, you're saying that there's a tree growing in the backyard of the dojo you go to? But you never noticed it before now?
It wasn't just me. It's not like someone else would ever notice something I didn't, right?
Wrong, but that's some serious self-confidence you've got there.
It was everyone, including my sensei who owns the place. We only just now noticed that there's a tree there, and we don't only practice inside the dojo, you know? We train outside too.
Uh-huh. Sure, outdoor karate practice seems reasonable. But if they were training out in the courtyard, the story was getting stranger and stranger. This courtyard had been getting plenty of use all along, and yet no one had ever noticed this tree growing there.
And then recently I found it. What's this? Have you always been here? Always.
Huh? You can talk formally?
Don't act so surprised. Of course I can. With those who deserve it, seems pretty basic.
But you've never once with me.
Didn't I just say, who deserve it?
She doesn't beat around the bush, my little sister. Does she think her big brother's feelings can't get hurt? Karen, you don't have to be formal with me, but try talking that way to your big brother to see how it feels.
Even though I won't mean it? Oh, honored brother, would you care to look upon my humble boobies?
I would not. Fine. Continue the story.
What's this? Have you always been here, oh honored boobies? I said.
You're getting mixed up again. If there were heretofore unnoticed boobies in the courtyard, that would be a big deal.
A tree was a big deal too. I mean, no one ever noticed. It was higgledy-piggledy. Everyone was like, huh? What's this doing here? Did someone plant this here in the middle of the night?
Higgledy-piggledy sounds like the name of a sausage maker, doesn't it? Hilda the pig lady?
Just because I'm not talking doesn't mean I'm bored. No need to force yourself to say something funny.
Seems like their sausages would be the best. Or not the worst, anyway.
Maybe it's your turn to try not talking. So, what was it actually like? Was there anything left?
Huh? Oh, no, big brother. I haven't actually eaten there. No leftovers, sorry. I'm not asking about the sausages. I'm asking if there was any trace left of someone coming into the courtyard in the middle of the night and planting that tree. That's a big operation. Examining the dirt around it ought to tell you something.
Yup. I'm sure it would even tell you something, big brother.
Are you asking me for help or mocking me? Which is it?
I'm mocking you while asking you for help.
Don't try to be clever.
There was no trace of anything like that. It was firmly rooted. No evidence of any digging or planting. Of course, neither the sensei nor any of the pupils are experts on soil or trees, so I can't be perfectly 100% certain, but as far as anyone can tell, the tree seems to have been there for ages. It's in /T-diluvian. /tree seems like it's been growing there for ages. It's in /T-diluvian.
Not only does she not know how to spell antediluvian, she seems to think it's just a synonym for old. How can she possibly get such good grades? She must have figured out how to game the system. But that's kinda scary. A tree no one ever noticed, growing in a courtyard that everyone uses all the time, for training and whatever else.
That's the thing, big brother.
What's she trying to do to my floorboards?
That's what everybody says. What are you on their side too, big brother?
No, I'm on your side, of course. I instantly tried to appease my little sister. I seem to be making a habit of it. This big brother really doesn't have any dignity, does he? And what exactly are they saying, Karen?
Everybody, they keep saying that the tree is scary. Scary or freaky. Of course, our sensei isn't saying anything like that, but all my insufficiently disciplined senpai and kohai are. They're spooked.
Lumping her senpai in with her kohai, even supposing she spoke formally towards anyone besides her sensei. It's gotta be a pretty exclusive group. Freaky, huh? Even if that's going too far, it's not like I can't understand where they're coming from. I'm not sure this is a fitting analogy, but wouldn't it be like cleaning your room and finding a book on your bookshelf that you didn't remember ever seeing before? A book you didn't remember buying, didn't remember reading. Sitting on the shelf as if it had been there all along, even if it wasn't freaky, it'd be a little unsettling.
I see. So you're on their side after all. You're one of them.
One of them? You keep talking about them, but I've never even met a single one of these people.
How can you side with people you've never even met? I'm the one you should believe. Are you really going to listen to a perfect stranger over me?
She was getting really worked up. A scary little sister. And even stupider than she is scary. What could be worse than a scary, stupid little sister? Maybe this is asking too much, but how about you try being just a tiny bit Mo?
At least hear me out. Can't you treat us evenly even?
Okay. I'll even be even. So, you're saying you don't feel that way?
Huh? About what? Karen looked blank. What were we talking about again?
Don't get sidetracked. You're losing the thread of your own story. You didn't feel like it was freaky that there was a tree you'd never noticed before growing in the courtyard.
Nope, Sure, I was shocked, but I wasn't spooked. I always order gizzard when I have yakitori, so I have a lot of grit.
That's not how it works, and I think courage is associated with the heart.
That's fine. I usually order that too.
Now that you mention it, the girl does go for the innards.
In fact, when I first noticed it, I felt ashamed to call myself a martial artist. So ashamed I considered suicide.
Sounds like you don't have the mental fortitude to be a martial artist.
I hoped everyone else would feel the same about it, but apparently they didn't.
Completely ignoring my dig, Karen continued with an uncharacteristically forlorn look in her eye. No, not just uncharacteristic. She's not the kind of person who ever has that look in her eye. Which meant this must have been a greater shock to her than I'd thought.
And because they're scared, they're talking about cutting it down.
And that's how I ended up around back of the dojo, led there by the arm. I don't mean that metaphorically. We really did go the whole way arm in arm. I'd be delighted to seem like a guy out for a companionable jaunt with his little sister. But the reality is that people probably thought I was the younger sibling. Karen's so much taller than me, and while we're at it, the arm-in-arm part was to keep me from running away before we got there. So the truth is that it wasn't particularly companionable either. Well, there is precedent for me breaking my promise to Karen and running off, so I can understand why she felt that way, but for once I had no thought of running away. Given how emotional and quick to judge she is, I took her story with a grain of salt, but to be honest, this story of a tree that existed without anyone noticing it piqued my interest. It had nothing to do with avoiding my exam prep, of course. As I'd told Karen, the tree was a lot smaller than I'd imagined. Even so, and even though it was an aged tree, it seemed highly unlikely that it could have been there without anyone noticing. It seemed unlikely, but apparently that's what happened. So what can I say? If Karen had been the only one claiming this, I would have said my little sister was oblivious and that'd be the end of it. Okay, maybe not, but with the other people's and even the master of the dojo all corroborating her story. So you were the first one to notice it? This tree?
I sure was. Praise me, praise me, pat my head, pats it.
I'm sorry to say you're too tall, I can't reach.
I'm not that huge.
So when everyone is training in the courtyard, you stand closest to this tree, right? Don't you think it was just that no one could see the tree because you were in the way?
I'm telling you, not that huge.
Karen went and actually stood in front of the tree. Some portion of the trunk was hidden, of course, but it's not like I couldn't see the tree obviously, since it was at least 10 feet tall. There wasn't a single leaf or fruit or anything, whether it was just that the season had passed or whether the tree had run out of the requisite life force to produce such things, I couldn't say, but judging from its height, I would have expected it to be visible even from outside the walls. I asked Karen about this.
Dunno, I take a different route. Maybe I saw it, but I was never aware of it.
There you go. I mean, most people don't go around peering at the trees in other people's yards, right?
Yeah, and I think the same is basically true even when you're inside the yard itself. Or in the middle of training. So maybe we just never noticed it. But doesn't that mean it was just our own negligence? As she said this, Karen turned around and touched the tree. We never noticed this tree thanks to our own negligence. We weren't kind enough to notice it. And now that we've noticed it, we say that it's freaky and ought to be cut down.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I could see where the people who said it ought to be cut down were coming from. But at the same time, it was only natural for Karen to think the whole thing was fucked up. Whether or not it actually was fucked up is another question. All I'm saying is it was only natural for Karen to think so. Both sides' opinions were valid. As a disinterested third party, I could only say that I understood where everyone was coming from, but the important thing here was that I wasn't a disinterested third party. There's a time and a place, of course. But at that time and in that place, all I could be was Karen's big brother. That's all I wanted to be. Okay then. It seems like you were telling the truth this time, so I'll help you.
What the hell, big brother? Are you saying you didn't believe me? How rude! When have I ever lied to you?
Including only the clearly verifiable instances, you've lied to me on 293 occasions. The first time was when you were 2 years old and had broken one of my toys.
I don't know whether to say you've got an amazing memory, a small mind, or a short stature.
Leave my stature out of it. Anyway, let's get down to business. Needless to say, we were currently trespassing on someone else's property. For Karen, this was evidently a Mika-size situation, but this was my first visit to the home of someone who I didn't know from a hole in the ground. I could not have been more antsy. In other words, you want to figure out some way to keep the tree from being cut down, right?
Yeah, with your political pull, big brother, I know you'll manage something.
I wouldn't count on my political pull.
I have an even more shameless request. Keeping the tree from being cut down makes it sound like it'd be okay if we found some way of moving it somewhere else. But that's off the table.
Off the table? Dial back the language when you're asking for help, okay? Why the hell are you saying that to me like it's some kind of rule or a condition of my contract?
It'd feel like we were driving this tree out of its home and I couldn't stand that, which is why I ask that you find a way for it to stay here like this forever.
Forever, huh? The tree seemed like it was going to die of its own accord in the not-too-distant future, so the forever part honestly seemed a bit difficult, though likewise moving a tree that old somewhere else was probably worse than difficult. If we were to preserve the tree, it seemed like it was going to have to be done there, whether or not I had the political pull. From what you said, your sensei doesn't think this tree is freaky.
Are you kidding, It's me, Sensei, we're talking about.
That didn't come out right, did it?
Are you kidding me? It's my Sensei we're talking about.
Geez, saying it with the same gusto, like you never messed up. In that case, though, can't you just ask your sensei to talk to the students who are so freaked out about it?
It's not that easy. Sensei certainly isn't freaked out by the tree, but that's only because to a martial artist, trees are just something to be kicked over.
That's nuts. Kicking over trees instead of cutting them down? Faced with someone like that, I guess Karen couldn't simply come out and say she felt sorry for the tree.
If this tree were gone, there'd be more room for training. So freaky or not, I think Sensei would secretly be glad to see it go. But it's not like they haven't already pled my case. I managed to get the tree a temporary reprieve.
Is that so?
Just because I came to you, big brother, doesn't mean I didn't go to my Sensei first.
Is that so?
But it's impossible to stop all the other disciples. They're all pretty cocky and won't just quietly follow Sensei's orders.
In that case, what if you tried to convince them as their fellow karate student, instead of your sensei handing down an order?
No good. Otherwise I would have done it already and not have bowed my head to you, big brother. I seriously hated having to.
Seriously hated, huh? The hurts just keep on coming from this little sister of mine. Like she's trying to gradually wear down my health bar.
At the same time, if I can convince the others, I bet I can convince my sensei. That is, Sensei said as much.
Aha!
To be exact, what Sensei said was, if you can beat the shit out of all the other disciples and change their minds, I don't mind leaving the tree alone. For your sake, I'll suppress my desire to kick it over. But I really don't want to beat the shit out of all the other disciples.
Seemed like her sensei erred a little too far on the side of practical combat. And the fact that Karen said she didn't want to, rather than couldn't, was terrifying. Though if they went by majority rule, she would get pwned, so maybe her sensei was considering her feelings in a way. The courtyard belonged to the dojo, so it was up to the sensei what happened to the tree. Yup. Karen was a cherished disciple. And my cherished little sister, if that's how it is, the obvious course of action would be to try and convince each of the other pupils one by one. Cocky. I'm not sure exactly what Karen meant by that, but if every one of them was a seasoned combatant, convincing them one by one didn't seem like it'd be an easy task. Instead of dealing with them one at a time, the best solution would be to come up with a principle that could convince all of them at once. I touched the aged tree as Karen was doing, and it felt real, in a way that didn't come across when you were simply looking at it. It made me think, this is a living thing. It wasn't just Karen, anyone might have been opposed to killing it simply because it started to wither, or simply because no one had been aware of it before, putting aside whether or not I agreed. If nothing else, we've got to get rid of this preconception that the tree is freaky. In other words, if we can prove that it's not an aberration, or an apparition, or some kind of evil spirit, but just a regular old plant.
Right. If only we can set those scaredy cats' minds at ease.
It might not be so easy to convince those scaredy cats with such a hostile attitude.
Yeah, fine. Let me rephrase that. Chickens, not scaredy cats.
Still only sensing hostility. You've got to be buddy-buddy with them.
It's not like we're not buddies. I usually have the utmost respect for my fellow fighters. But in this case, they're chicken. A bunch of chicken littles running around like chickens with their heads cut off. But mark my words, their actions will come home to roost.
Anyway, naturally, it wouldn't be too hard to prove that the tree was just a plain old tree. We could verify it by taking a cell sample. No exaggeration, we could end the whole business with a little trip to the school science lab. But I didn't think that was what Karen was after, and I didn't think it'd make the chickens back down. Scientific inquiry doesn't necessarily do anything to dispel a visceral doubt. Saying the tree had been falsely accused might be putting it a little forcefully, but establishing its innocence was a bit of a devil's proof. I knew that this was just a plain old tree and not an aberration, but there was absolutely no way for me to get that across to someone else. And when you get right down to it, even my sense of things isn't always correct. It'd be the vampire's proof, not the devil's proof still. If push came to shove, I could get Shinobu to confirm it. Karen, can you think of a reason why no one noticed this tree all those years? Doesn't it seem a little much to ascribe it entirely to the greenness of some karate students?
Not at all.
I see. If that was how she felt, then so be it, but if we could only cook up some kind of reason, something that made sense, it seemed like we might be able to convince the other students. I say cook up like I'm some sort of swindler, because when you really think about it, we could probably chalk up the fact that no one ever spotted this tree to simple negligence, if not greenness. No, maybe negligence was overstating the case too. But it's only natural for there to be trees in a certain type of courtyard. Canberry's house has them, for instance. And since it's a pretty standard scenic option for a house with this kind of vibe, you don't end up really paying it any mind. It was neither negligence nor greenness. It's just that nobody paid any attention to the presence of the tree until Karen pointed it out, and then it was suddenly thrust into the forefront of everyone's mind. Which is probably precisely why Karen felt responsible for an old tree growing in somebody else's courtyard, even if that person is her sensei. So, what did Tsukihi say about it? Don't play dumb with me. There's no way you consulted me without consulting Tsukihi first. What did the Fire Sister strategist have to say?
Oh, she told me about Washington.
The city?
The president.
I assumed she meant the story about how George Washington, first president of the United States of America, cut down a cherry tree. Dare I ask why she brought up that story?
She said, "Can't you just break it and apologize?"
Sounds like Tsukihi when she has no interest in what you're saying. My little sister Tsukihi loves to stick her nose into other people's troubles, but is the flip side of that her utter lack of interest in her own family's troubles? I'm afraid she wasn't actually listening to anything you had to say. What would you be apologizing for? What misdeed?
She was saying that regardless of what you have or haven't done, whether you're in the wrong or not, if something happens, just apologize.
Tsukihi's entire life philosophy lay bare. Though in this case, Karen would probably be a hero if she broke it, seeing as that's what everyone including her sensei was hoping for. I was reminded afresh of Karen's inner strength sticking to her own opinion even when everyone around her, her erstwhile comrades no less, all saw it differently. I, at least, wasn't possessed of the mental fortitude to brave friction and conflict when victory promised no concrete advantage or benefit. That alone was enough to make me want to help her out. Just this once, oops, that makes it sound like I care about my little sister. Let's call it an opportunity for me to put Karen in my debt.
What's with the evil look?
Karen, how much time have we got to play with?
Almost none. Even tomorrow might be too late. We're up against the possibility that someone will try and knock it over sometime today.
Gosh, at least use a saw. Anyway, not much time. Almost none, or none. Even if we did have some time, it would be of the essence. I had to assume that all the other disciples came and went as freely as Karen, so it was entirely possible one of them might go rogue, and seemingly every last one of them could topple the tree without using any tools. Then I know what to do. Karen, you can rely on your reliable brother.
Really? Then, as thanks, I'll let you do whatever you please with my boobies.
I don't want you to think that I was motivated by that reward, so I will not do whatever I please.
Playing hard to get, huh? Why, you?
How about I do whatever I displease?
Whatever you displease. What are you planning to do to my boobies? Anyway, big brother, what are you gonna do?
Trust me. Please, Hanekawa.
You're just unloading it on me?
That night, I called Hanekawa. I decided to give her a full rundown on the old tree and Karen's dojo, and to ask for the benefit of her wisdom. I did everything I could, but I hit a wall. Please, do something for Karen. Help me, Hanekawa. You're my only hope.
Aren't you giving up a little too easily?
I heard her sigh. Lately, Hanekawa had stopped even trying to hide her disappointment in me. Please. I'll do whatever I please with your boobies if you do.
My boobies are my own. Thank you very much, but fine. For Karen's sake, not yours, Araragi. Araragi, if I think of it that way, I can find the motivation.
So, what do you think?
About what? What?
I mean, first off, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter. Who are you with, Karen? Or everybody else?
Karen, of course. You can't just dispose of a living tree for no good reason. You don't agree, Araragi?
Let's see. That's my gut feeling, but if I were actually involved, who knows, I probably would have gone along with everyone else's opinion, whatever my own feeling might have been.
And there you go.
NHNA.
That's how everyone besides Karen must have felt. What I mean is, I don't think the majority of them actually want to dispose of the tree like you and your sister think they do. If you can just get the opinion leaders to change their minds, everything will be taken care of.
Hanekawa's done it again. My faith in her is not misplaced.
And I think you were exactly right about the reason no one noticed that tree up until now. Araragi, it wasn't a question of noticing or not noticing. It was just that nobody was really aware of it. But once it's on your mind, it's really on your mind. It ends up catching your eye more than it would otherwise. Like your bedhead, Araragi.
Like my bedhead, huh? If it's catching your eye, say something. At the time, I mean, when you learn a new word, it starts cropping up everywhere, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I suppose so, Hanekawa said. Or like how nobody remembers every single shop on a street, even if it's one they walk down all the time.
Except for you.
As if?
To cover up the truth, probably.
This goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but I wonder if some of the disciples at the dojo actually had noticed the tree before. But once everyone started talking about the tree, no one had noticed. They felt like they couldn't speak up. Doesn't that seem possible?
Like they didn't want to spoil the mood? Definitely seems possible.
But even if that explains the phenomenon itself, we still need to figure out how to spin it. It's only natural for people to see it as a mysterious phenomenon, as a mysterious tree.
I mean, this confluence of coincidences might get passed down to future generations as the tale of an aberration. Who knows what kinds of stories get popular, or how? We can theorize about it. But a theory is just that. It can never be anything more.
Just to be clear, Araragi, there's a pandemic of panic sweeping the dojo now, right?
Panic is kind of an exaggeration, but yeah, there's something of an outbreak.
So we just need to bring that to an end.
Well, sure. But countermeasures are ineffective against pandemics, aren't they? That's the whole problem.
No, that's not necessarily true. There is a way to stop a pandemic.
Huh?
A way to stop one, or a way for one to stop.
I guess this time there's nothing for it. Hanekawa made it sound like she'd prefer it to be otherwise. And once I'd heard the wisdom she was about to share, I understood why. This time even I couldn't bring myself to say, you know everything, don't you? The epilogue, or maybe, the punchline of this story. Well, the fact that I didn't set Hanekawa up for her usual catchphrase is already a hell of a twist ending. But anyway, here's what happened. Cutting straight to the conclusion, the old tree Karen wanted to protect didn't get chopped down. And naturally, I don't mean that it got punched or kicked over either. It's alive and well, even as we speak. I can't guarantee it'll be there forever, but for now, it does seem to have weathered the storm. As for what we did, a pandemic or a panic will come to an end when it gets to where it's going. It'll stop when it reaches its goal. Basically, when any kind of virus has spread so widely that it can't spread any further, there's nothing else for it to infect, so the outbreak ends of its own accord. That's how the food chain remains stable, though in this case, of course, we couldn't actually let it get to where it was going, since the end of the line for this particular pandemic was the old tree's disposal. So what we have to do is move the goalposts at this stage. Everyone thinks the tree is freaky, right? Or one step up, scary. That's where the general awareness level is at, right? Freaked out, terrified, we just have to move them one stage further up the ladder. That's where we need to put the goal. One stage further, which would be awe, I guess. Awe. Not just fear, fearful reverence. The next day, this is what Karen told her fellow disciples. That aged tree was like the ones used in the construction of our sacred dojo, and apparently it was planted in the rear courtyard as the dojo's guardian deity, which explains the mysterious phenomenon we all experienced. That was how she explained it to them. That was how she spun it to them. Having watched unseen over the disciples of this dojo for many decades, a god of the martial arts finally revealed itself, its energy expended. To cut it down would be unthinkable, but she adopted Hanekawa's fairy tale pretty much as is Karen. Of course, isn't the kind of person who'd lie to anyone except her big brother, so first I had to dupe her. She also isn't the type to believe in aberrations, but a few months previously she'd experienced some weird shit, and apparently the spiritual frame story of an invisible martial arts guardian deity was relatively easy for her, as a martial artist, to accept. As for the other students of the dojo, including the ones who'd only been swept along, the truth of the matter had been brought to light without negating their opinions and feelings. It even extrapolated from them, so that was the end of the line for the panic. Or to put it another way, nothing more happened. And if that was the truth, they'd never dream of harming the tree. This fiction was not going to fool Karen Sensei, the master of the dojo, of course. It stands to reason, though, there's no way of knowing for sure that the lumber used to build the dojo didn't come from the same kind of tree as our aged friend. But I somehow doubt that'll come up there. Sensei won't want to spoil the mood. After all, Karen will have convinced everyone like she promised. Apparently, that was indeed how it went. I guess Hanekawa's view that the sensei who had a dojo to run wasn't foolish enough to rekindle a panic that had finally abated was on point, and so. For the moment, the tree's life has been prolonged. Karen, taking responsibility, protected this tree she had found.
I do feel bad about lying, though.
Having leaned on Hanekawa's wisdom, I was in no position to bolster her spirits when she said this, but I couldn't help trying to console her. It wasn't necessarily a lie.
Hun?
For all we know, that tree might be an aberration. I don't know if it's a guardian deity, but maybe it was an aberration that no one was aware of because it was hiding its presence all along. And the dojo being built from the same kind of wood isn't out of the question. It's statistically possible.
Sure, a statistically negligible possibility.
Statistically negligible possibilities are still possible. And, well, even if I meant it by way of consolation, the next thing I said might have gone too far. Thanks to the way we spun it, that tree might actually have become an aberration. One to watch over the disciples as they train.